2020. My name is Tom Kearns, Chair and Select Board appointee. And I'd like to start out by inviting my CPC colleagues to introduce themselves and their appointments. And as we've done in the past, I'll do a brief roll call and use the roster that's presented on the website. So Peter.
Peter Ward, Vice Chair, Select Board appointee.
Judy.
Judy Zombrecker, Natural Resources Commission appointee.
Paul.
Paul Grasso, Recreation Commission.
Burton. Burton, check that mute.
He's not muted, but I can't hear him.
Okay, Burton, check your technology. We're going to come right back to you, Nancy.
Nancy Nelson, Historical Commission Rep.
Thank you, Nancy. Hester.
Hester Schnipper from the Concord Housing Authority Board. And just a quick warning, I just finished with patients. So 15 minutes from now or so, I'm going to start eating a very quick dinner and I will shut the camera down while I'm doing that. But I'll be.
Hester, we completely understand. Thank you. Diane.
Diane Proctor, an appointee from the Select Board.
John.
John Kratzley, a Select Board appointee.
Thank you, John. Burton. Did that work? No, and Burton will join us, and I think he's joining us from the Planning Board. So, well, good evening, everybody. I'd like to just welcome you to our meeting. And in fact, tonight is two parts. It is part one, public hearing, and part two, we'll close the public hearing and go into our public meeting where we'll continue with our review deliberations and recommendations. In the first part, well, I think I'd like to start out by saying, if at any time you would like to speak, please raise your hand, either virtually or give me or Heather a wave. And remember to unmute yourself if you want to speak. If you could, other than committee members, if you could state your name, that would be wonderful. And while you're not speaking, if you could be muted, that would help everything. So thank you so much. I think our agenda this evening begins with a PowerPoint presentation that will be an overview of this year's applications. And the purpose of these is to review essentially the way these would be presented on a warrant article. They're grouped by category, and I will take us through each category briefly and then open the call up for questions or comments. We want to make sure we hear from members of the public. If there are any questions of clarification or additional information, if you have any comments or support, the committee would love to hear from you. Thank you so much. Committee members, if there's additional information that we've asked for that either may have arrived or we're unsure if it has, let's ask that, and Heather can clarify that. We may get some clarification from applicants that have joined us as well. So the purpose, I think, of the hearing is input. We want to get as much high quality input as we can and make sure we've got as much information to work with as we can. We'll go through each category. At the end of each category, I'll ask for questions and comments. Then we'll move to the next category. At the end, we will have another opportunity. If there's any other questions that people have, then we'll close the public hearing. We'll go to the public meeting and the committee will start to do their work. Everybody's welcome to join and watch us go about our business or sign out. That's your call. Okay. Heather, what did I miss? Pretty good so far?
I think we're ready to get started.
Shall we tee up the PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, I'll start screen sharing now.
Yeah, thanks. Now I'm going to move through this relatively briefly. And if there are questions, please don't hesitate to interrupt, but I will stop at the end of each category to formally ask for questions. Okay, thank you. This is the Community Preservation Committee meeting of December 1st, 2020. And let's move to the next slide. So the CPA in Concord and the CPC's charge, the funding comes from 1.5% of surcharge on our real estate property tax bills out of a possible 3%. The first 100,000 of taxable value is exempt. Persons with income of less than 80% I'll just say AMI are exempt. Seniors with income less than 100% AMI are exempt. And the funds are matched by a certain percentage as determined by the State Community Preservation Fund. Thank you. Here are some examples of the types of projects that the CPC has recommended funding for over the last decade or more. And they are in a series of categories. In the community housing category, we've recommended funding for 22% of the overall funds available to projects like the ones you see on the screen. Historic preservation has represented about 35%. Open space, 17%. Recreation, 24%. And you can just see just a small sampling of wonderful projects and projects that make Concord special and beloved. The review process is typically intense. This cycle, it's been especially intense. We had a delayed town meeting in September, and that has meant that we've been together nearly every week through this process. It's been great. The committee has done amazing work. We had presentations by applicants the 20th and 27th of October, the 10th of November. We were also together on November 17th to begin our deliberations, and we're here together tonight on the 1st. And we have outlined opportunities to be together on both the 8th and the 15th of December. Okay. In terms of applications received, the total requests are a little over $2.2 million, as you can see in the green bar. The total funds available is approximately a little over $1.8 million. However, a little over $100,000 of that money is reserved for land acquisition for community housing. And since we have no requests, that'll be carried forward. So the actual estimated funds that we have to make recommendations around is a little over $1.7 million. So you can see in this slide that we have about a $500,000 gap to kind of work through. Okay, this is a pie chart that shows basically the distribution of the major categories of open space, community housing, historic preservation, and then we have some pairing of open space and historic preservation, open space and recreation, and some administration, but you can generally see how the applications look this year in terms of the kind of the proportions of requests.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if this, Tom, reflects the community housing as well.
Yeah, Peter, your question, community housing, maybe can you clarify that?
I'm not sure. Is that available on the pie chart there?
Yes, it's in orange, Peter.
Okay. Oh, are you saying that the land acquisition reserve?
Community housing projects.
Oh, in orange, 555,000.
Good. Okay.
You see it there? Yeah, great, thanks. And
Yep.
Peter, good segue, because that's the first category that we're going to go through. So I'm going to walk us briefly through the 3 projects requested in community housing. You can see totaling $555,000. And those projects are the Housing Production Plan Update. The request is $30,000. And this is required to be updated every 5 years. This request was delayed a year because of the census. And it is a kind of regular cycle and cost. And let's move to the next item. Okay, the second project is the Regional Housing Services Program. And this is a request of $25,000. There is also a match of $25,000. And this really does provide the opportunity for new and maintaining existing affordable units in town. And it is the money to be part of this program. Okay, and this is the third application is for the Affordable Housing Buydown. And this is a $500,000 request. And this is to enable that conversion of existing market rate unrestricted housing to restricted affordable housing. Great demand, and so a program that we try to continue to fund. So that is the third of 3 in the community housing. Are there questions or comments about any of the community housing projects from members of the committee or the community? And I see John's hands up. John.
I had asked previously, and I don't know if I don't recall the answer, whether we, what is the last time there was a housing production plan, and did the CPC ever fund it in the past?
Last time was 2015. And Heather, do you have the information on the funding?
Marcia is here and she can probably answer that question.
The last plan was not updated, was updated, and CPC did provide some funding, but at the time it did not come through an application per se. It was part of the administrative cost. And so it was rolled into that administrative cost, I believe. I've been trying to find what it cost to do the 2015 report. At that point in time, it was relatively easy because we were dealing with the 2010 census. We were not dealing with new census information. And it was sectioned out. Different people prepared different aspects of it. Our HSO staff prepared the needs assessment. We hired a consultant to do our public outreach. And the senior planner at the time participated because she wanted to learn more about the affordable housing program in Concord. So it was a very active role for the senior planner. We estimate, and I'm still looking to get the numbers for you, John, but we estimate it was somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Marcia. Other questions or comments from the community or the public? Mary?
Hi, my name is Mary Hartman. I live in Concord Green. I'm also the chair of the Finance Committee, but I'm speaking entirely for myself. First of all, I'd like to say that the housing production plan, when I first came to Concord and I needed to get familiar, up to speed really quickly with affordable housing, this plan was indispensable to me. So I think this is just a great document. So I think it's money well spent. As far as my next point, though, is on the $500,000 for the Concord Housing Development Corporation. I know that for the past 2 years, the town has voted to appropriate $1 million from free cash for affordable housing as they become available to us. And I'm wondering, does the committee know if there's any money available there? If any other opportunities come up within the next year? Or, I mean, is this I know that the town is funding out of free cash $500,000 every year. Is this in addition to that? And if it is, or if it isn't, is there money available through the money that's already been appropriated that could be used for buy downs? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. That's an excellent question. I don't think I have that information.
I think I might. I believe that the fund is available. There's probably about $750,000 with the appropriation from the 2020 town meeting and remaining from the 2019 town meeting of about $275,000. Unfortunately, it's not as flexible. You can't just direct it. I think it needs to go back to town meeting to appropriate that. And so that's part of the problem of not funding something for the CHDC, who can act, they're a little more nimble, they can be more responsive when something becomes available, and they can simply direct the money to that project or program. It doesn't require additional town meeting votes.
Actually, I thought it was at the discretion of the town manager that money could be appropriated when we voted it at town meeting. So it's just something to look into. Okay, thank you.
No, thank you, Mary. Other questions or comments with regard to community housing? Both the committee or the public at large? Seeing and hearing none, I think we'll move on, Heather, to historic preservation. And there are 4 historic preservation projects. And here they are, totaling a little over $800,000 of requests. And the first one is the Emerson Field Flagpole. And if we go to the next slide, request $14,250. And this is the rehabilitation of the flagpole. And you can see the work entailed. Okay, thank you. Next project. Second project is 110 Walden Street, preservation phase 3, Concord Home for the Aged. Next slide, please. And requests totaling $185,000 with matching funds of $44,000. And the project summary here is, it includes the roof replacement, the fascia and gutter system, structural and masonry repairs, and the inspection repairs of all windows. Okay, thank you. And the third project is 58 Monument Square, the roof replacement and historic structures report. This is the Concord Masonic Corporation project. And the request is for $107,261. And this is for the removal of the existing roof and replacement with related repairs and the completion of the comprehensive historic structures report for the building. Okay, next, and the last project is to repair, stabilize, and renovate Wright Tavern, brought to us by the trustees of Parish Donations First Parish Church. Next slide, please. And the funding request is $500,000. There are some matching funds of $247,662. And this is for structural repairs, stabilization, reinforcement of the structure, systems like sprinkler upgrades, mechanical system upgrades, and other system related work for the Wright Tavern. And I think that those are the 4 projects for historic preservation. Questions or comments on any one of the 4 projects from the committee or members of the public? Diane.
Thank you very much, Tom. On 110 Walden Street, would those preservation needs, I believe the answer is going to be yes, but I want to make sure it's publicly so declared, be necessary regardless of how that facility is used in the future?
I don't know if there's someone that's representing that project here that would like to speak to it. Looks like Tom Wilson.
Yep. Hi, Tom. Thank you. Thank you, Diana. Yes, it is. It's actually we're concerned about the building itself. We had a inspection, probably one of the first done in many, many years, to really go through a very, very detailed analysis of the structure of the building, the integrity of the building. And regardless of what the uses are going to be, this is needed in order to sustain the building and its structure itself. You know, if there's a earthquake, if there's a strong hurricane, there's a tornado, whatever, the building is in a fairly fragile place. It's not unsafe at this point, but it could be, you know, it put it lots of jeopardy, if it will. But our intent also obviously is part of what we're trying to do, and we've mentioned to the committee before, is that First Parish is engaged right now and has been for about 10 months now, a major initiative to look at ways in which we can create a new definition, a new future for the Wright Tavern. And that would be including lots of public access. We're looking for developing partnerships that would actually help promote the Wright Tavern as an important historical and memorable place within Concord. And so part of the things that's necessary for us to be able to build those kinds of partnerships would be to have a building that was basically sustainable. But this is for what I like to describe it is behind the walls. It's not really dealing with the interior attributes of the building itself. It's just making sure that the building will be able to sustain and live for another 150 years.
Tom, thank you. Diane, did we get?
110, I think I spoke to 110 Walden Street.
Yeah, thanks. I think the question was with regard to
It wasn't
110
really about Wright
Walden.
Tavern. My question was, regardless of how that facility is used both now and in the future, my presumption is these structural improvements are absolutely necessary, right?
Yeah, Diane, thanks. So we're talking about 110 Walden, the Timothy Wheeler. And Tom, nice job. Let's see if
I was
there's
responding to the Wright Tavern. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
I'm sure we'll be back to you. Thank you.
To that one, I just want to hear the other publicly.
Anyone that would like to address the
Melissa or Anita, both do.
Melissa?
I just would like to speak up on behalf of the Historical Commission. While we do support in general this application, we are very concerned that you have not defined what the ultimate use is. When you say lots of public access and to be historically important, to me, it sounds mutually exclusive. A lot of public access threatens an historic structure. So I just want to go on record here that we are very concerned that you have not defined the ultimate use. This is a very important historic building to Concord and the United States.
So Melissa, thank you very much. We're having some parallel conversations here. No, that's fine. Thank you for this back and forth, but we're going to close the discussion right now on Wright Tavern, and let's stay with Timothy Wheeler, which was the original question.
It was about
110 Walden. Now we're going by names and addresses, so it sometimes can be.
Okay.
I think maybe Anita is perfectly positioned to handle it.
Tom, thank you. It is a residential structure, and currently, it's been used all these years, about 140 years, as for under the current owners, but it's always been a residence. It needs a new roof. The windows are from 1850. They're original to the major renovation of the building, and they need repair. We have made the commitment to restore them rather than replace them, which was one of the priorities identified in our historic resource report. But the work will have to be done also to insulate the attic in the conjunction with replacing the roof. So all of those are really critical. They would have to be done in the near future. It's not imminent. We do have some leaks in one section of the roof, but it clearly needs to be done in the next couple of years.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Other questions or comments about the historic preservation category and our 4 projects? No questions. Yes, Diane.
Yeah, John, I wonder if I'm sorry, my machine is misbehaving. Tom Wilson, could you address the concerns that were raised by Melissa?
Sure.
DC?
Sure, I would love to. Thank you very much. I think the concern is what do we mean by public access? And to be honest with you, we are in a study at the stage of our work at this point in time is going through we have a 3 to 5 year strategy here to looking towards some of the celebrations related to the 250 celebration of our founding of our country, and understanding the role and importance of the Wright Tavern had in that event, and can have for what it means as a building, as a structure, and what happened there. So we're actually in a study mode right now to try to determine what is the vision that we should have that would serve the interests of town of Concord and what the building was intended for. And so we have a fairly large task force, a group of different groups and project teams that are working on researching other organizations. Ultimately, we're looking at trying to define to develop a relationship with some partner. We're not sure who that is at this point in time, that then we can assure that there will be public access to the building, particularly on the first floor. The second and third floors are really not suited for that. So it really for the first floor. It's kind of very similar. Our idea is very similar to the kind of relationship we had a number of years ago with the Concord Museum. And that relationship was one where we had different kinds of enactments. We had different educational programs going on. It was not something that brought in hordes of tourists and stuff. But it was something that really began to give people a deeper understanding of what happened there in that building. So I have to say at this point in time, just to be really honest with you, we don't know who that partner is. It's not something that I don't think that First Parish wants to take on as a project itself, just in terms of our managerial and other resource demands, but it's something we're looking for our partner to be. So what we're trying to do is to set up a situation where we have a structure that is sound and is well, structurally, it has lots of integrity. And then as we talk to people, we can begin to say what would be the right use and the partnership for that organization. So we're very committed to a vision that is going to provide some more public access than what has been in the past. But we're also very sensitive to the structure of the building. We don't want to create something that would actually create harm to the building. But we do want to provide some process or some partner, if you will, that would really provide the kind of connection between the Wright Tavern and Concord, because right now it's, and for a number of years, it's been, in private hands and used for offices. We'd like to see it open up, but we still have a lot of ideas we want to pursue that would help to do that.
Thank you, Tom. Rosalind, did you want to follow up?
Hi, this is Rosalind Romberg. I am a trustee of parish donations for First Parish in Concord and also a trustee of the Wright Tavern. And I wanted to reassure the members of the CPC, and in particular Nancy and Melissa and Diane and others who have raised questions of this question in particular about how the building will be used. To reiterate what Tom said, we are years away from articulating that, but the proposal that we have before the CPC right now and the matching and the donors to whom we will be addressing for matching funds, our proposal, it has nothing to do really with future use of the building and everything to do with ensuring that the building is available and is standing in the years to come. The work in this proposal is entirely behind the walls. It is to ensure the structural integrity of the building, to ensure that the roof and the walls remain intact, that we don't lose some of the phenomenal work that's been done over the years in restoring the windows, restoring the chimneys. So again, the proposal is not about use. It is about sustaining this marvelous part of Concord's history and ensuring that it will be with us for decades and centuries to come.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judy, and then Nancy.
Yes, thank you for that. I was looking through the project budget, and maybe I'm not a builder or an architect, so it may be my lack of understanding of various terminologies, but I see it broken down into structural repairs. Then there's restore interior finishes, thermal insulation and moisture barriers, mechanical systems, and then updating alarms, putting in like a brick sidewalk, those type of things. And my question is all of that required to maintain the structural integrity of the building? Could you help me understand that, if, for instance, only the first part of the project, the budget was funded, what would happen if the other things were postponed or delayed? Would that impact the structural integrity of the building?
I can speak to that initially, and then Tom might follow up. We would not postpone or delay the work, in part because the structural work, for example, the engineering work required to repair and restore the foundation or the rafters in the attic and things like that, that needs to be done. And then when we talk about things like some of the mechanical systems, the fire suppression system, the alarm system, some of these systems are so old that they are now so completely not up to building code that it would be, frankly, almost an immoral act to go through the work of restoring the building and then not putting in the types of systems that could save it from a fire or from an accident, that sort. The parts that are novel, that are not so much about structural integrity from an engineering point of view, but are from a building, long-term building sustainability, are things like the addition of the of insulation. And we would, at the suggestion of both the building inspector and the structural engineering firm, we would like to, for example, put in a dehumidification system to preserve not just the structural pieces like rafters and joists, but also to preserve the beautiful paneling and many of the other architectural elements of the building.
Thank you,
Does that
Rosa.
answer that?
Yeah, thank you.
I have a basic question. Are we postponing the discussion of Wright Tavern, or are we inserting it now?
We are asking questions and making general comments and trying to ensure that we have all of the background information.
About which project, not the project we started out with.
In the historic preservation category, of which there are 4 projects.
No, but we're finished with Timothy Wheeler.
We are still in historic preservation, talking about.
Okay. So we're.
That's okay. Yeah, no, that's. Thank you for the question around clarification. So we're talking about the historic preservation category. There are 4 projects. We've
Right.
A bit about Timothy.
Very familiar.
We've talked quite a bit more about the Wright Tavern. I don't think there's been anything about the Masonic Corporation project nor the Emerson Field Flagpole, but those are the 4 that are in play right now in this category.
So my comments about Wright Tavern would be appropriate now.
Yes, but I would also, if I may, this is for us to get as much high quality input as possible. And we will move from the public hearing portion, which is this, to the public meeting in just a little while, where we'll have our matrix up and we'll go through our deliberation.
Okay, perfect.
So that'll be it's your choice depending on what you want to say, but that's a little bit of the difference between the two. This is another round of input from the community at large, and then we'll be really as a committee discussing the merits of each.
I just say then very shortly that I was very happy to see the historic structures report. I read that, the building inspection report and the structural engineering reports. I don't interpret those things the same way they're being presented, and maybe that's better left so the public can make more comments here. But
thank you, Nancy. We definitely want to hear your insight.
I can wait.
Yeah, thank you. Other questions or comments about our 4 historic preservation projects?
I was very happy to see that Alec is here. Maybe he could tell us about what his board might be saying tonight about their support of the possibility of having a shingle roof instead of fake slate roof.
Yeah, absolutely happy to jump in. So at the board's request, we went out and I was able to secure a quote for wood shingles Same roofing expert as before. It came in at 65,000, so it ups our budget roughly around, I want to say $7,000 requested. My board has met, and the president of the board texted me, and the general gist of the board's impression is that we are at a point of needing to save the building. And so if this committee has a preference and would be willing to support us when we go back to the HDC, we're willing to consider whatever roofing material that you would discuss. Nancy, you and I are probably way more preservationists than the rest of my board are. I do happen to agree that wood shingles, being the original material, is really bringing the building back to its original state. And as such, I would fully support that, and I'd be willing to carry that back to the HDC.
Thank you. Thank you. I was really happy to see that.
Thanks, Nancy. Alec, thank you. I had a little bit of a follow-up on that. I looked at least one of the estimates that was presented, and it looked like the body of the estimate was really presented for a different project. And you talked about clapboard siding and other things that I don't think are part of your application. So I just mentioned that to Heather. Maybe that has been revised a bit. I don't know, or it's maybe just a little detail work that could be done. I don't think it's
maybe a typo.
The general motivation of the thing is good. I just thought there was some things we might tune up in the body of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Out of curiosity, do you happen to remember if that was for the synthetic material or for the most recent bid that I brought forth?
I thought it was for the most recent, but Heather will be able to correct me, I'm sure.
Okay, I'm happy to go back through that as well as we get closer to the recommendation date.
That's fine. We can look more specifically at that, and Heather, you can help make sure we get all your information to be as good as it can be.
Sounds good.
Other
this is Peter. I had one more question about the possibility of a cedar roof here. I was told years ago by a roofer that cedar shingles require a linseed application once a year. And if indeed that's the case, has that been factored into the overall cost, ongoing cost from a maintenance perspective?
I don't think that's right.
Again, this is Alec from the board of directors for the Concord Masonic Corporation. We haven't had the opportunity to fully evaluate the ongoing maintenance costs. It was a point of concern for the rest of the board, is that it would require more care over time, but we haven't had the opportunity to crunch numbers. Routine maintenance would not be available under CPC funding, so we would be incurring the ongoing cost.
And that's why I bring this up.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Nancy?
Just an aside on that, given the national parks, many wood roofs, I could say that we certainly didn't do that. So that'd be interesting to know.
No, I specify many every year, and no, we don't do that.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments for Emerson Flagpole, 110 Walden, the Masonic Corporation roof replacement, or Wright Tavern? Good. Thank you all for that supplemental information that's on the website. Heather, thanks for getting all the material there. I know the committee was hard at work doing its homework. And so it looks like we are ready to move to our next category. There is one project in the open space and historic preservation category. Total request is $20,000. This is for the Wheeler Harrington House and Land. And if we go to the next slide, the $20,000 is to hire a professional facilitator to assist in determining the future use and plans of this property. Okay, and are there any questions or comments? This is the one project in this category of open space and historic preservation. Yes, John.
Yeah, Marcia, I wanted to ask again if you have any better sense of what a public outreach effort would look like.
A little bit. Where the funds would be available next summer with a vaccine on the horizon. I envision first having meetings with the Historical Commission and the Natural Resources Commission together to talk about the history of the land and the history of the house and how we might integrate those two aspects so that we can tell the story of the house and the land. And then develop a couple of different options or alternatives that we would then have a public meeting. It could be a survey, it could be an actual workshop, it might be a video to begin to tell the story and to get some feedback and some input that would then help us discern the best path forward to in how to use the house or reuse the house, and what we might add to the property to help interpret how things were at some point in time. So that's where I'm headed, and what I see.
Thank you, Marcia. John, follow?
Well, yes, that would contemplate returning to the CPC for some future funding. Would you agree?
Potentially, yes.
Thank you, Marcia. Other questions for Wheeler Harrington House and Land? Questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you so much. Heather, I think we're ready to move to open space and recreation categories. And there are 4 projects in this category, totaling a little over $600,000. And the first project is the White Pond Beach Improvements Project. The funding request is $300,000. You can see there that there's a past fund allocation and a large amount of matching funds. This is the summary of the project is around an accessible pedestrian pathway and related site improvements, as well as stormwater improvements to the site. Next project is the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. And the request is for $25,000. And this is to provide additional landscaping and related improvements to enrich the visitor experience along the multi-phased Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Okay, and the next project is the Warner's Pond Dredging. Funding request $250,000. There you can see the past CPA funding and as well the capital budget funding applied to this project. And this is dredging the various areas of Warner's Pond and improving the ecological health and enhancing the recreational opportunities of the pond. Okay, thank you. Old Rifle Range survey and permitting is the next project. The funding request, $34,500. Matching funds, $22,000. And this is for the survey, design, and permitting to improve a specific section of the main trail that is impassable and sometimes steep and dangerous. Okay, so those are our 4 projects in the open space and recreation category. Are there questions or comments from the committee or the general public to the applicants? Anything on open space and recreation? Judy.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it was just a clarification on the Warner's Pond project. The slide showed that you went through, Tom, indicated dredging and improvement of the boat launch. My understanding is that the request for this year is for monies related only to the dredging of the pond. Is that correct?
I think that is correct. Do we have an error on the slide?
Yes, it is. It is only for the dredging. Sorry, this is Kate Hodges, deputy.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. Yeah, I think you're correct, Judy. So
okay, thank you.
We have a slide edit to do. Yep, thank you. Other questions or comments about open space and recreation White
I have a s-
Pond, Bruce Freeman, Warner's Pond, Rifle Range. Mary.
I have a comment about White Pond. For me, when I took the time to actually go read the application, and once I read the application, it became clear to me of the scope of this project. And this particular part here is really just looking at ADA compliance and stormwater management. Am I correct in assuming that? And because I think what happens is that people get confused as far as are some of the amenities that are discussed in like the survey or some of the amenities that were discussed at the forum, are they included in this or aren't they? And I'd just like to be clear on the scope of this particular phase of the project.
Thank you, Mary. Would someone like to address that?
I'm happy to take that. Kate Hodges, Deputy Town Manager. Mary, you're absolutely correct. This is a multi-phase project of which other phases don't ever have to be completed should the community not wish to have them. What we're talking about needing to do at a bare minimum, ADA compliance, we're actually not in compliance. And in 2018, we were allowed to operate because we didn't technically own the facility yet. We hadn't passed papers on the gift acceptance until 2019. And we were forgiven this past year because we had a delay in our town meeting, and therefore we had an unforeseen circumstance of why we didn't have the funding to be able to start. So at a bare minimum, we had ADA improvements and accessibility that we had to make. The stairway leading from the top of the parking lot area down into the beach area is not only not accessible, but it also isn't code compliant, and it's deteriorating quite rapidly, and it's quite unsafe. And so we need to repair those. And because of that, we need to provide equal access from the top to the bottom. And so there's a lot of conversations and suggestions that people are saying, well, why don't we just have ADA parking down the bottom? And unfortunately, that doesn't satisfy the town's needs or our requirements under both ADA and the Architectural Access Bureau. The second part, which you mentioned, is sustainability. I couldn't agree more. I personally think, and I know that there's quite a few people on the White Pond Advisory Committee and things that came out of the White Pond group that generously gifted it the gift to us, that we need to do something in order to capture and trap some of that runoff that's coming down from the boat launch area. And the idea was, if we're going to have some disturbance on the hillside to create accessibility, why not utilize some of that to also capture rainwater? And so we thought paying someone to come in, a group to come in and mobilize and do those two pieces would be the bare minimum that we would have to do. The project is really somewhat in its infancy stages, and we were lucky enough to be granted the money that we got from CPC to begin. Unfortunately, we again revised the capital budget, and so we didn't have any money from capital before for that. And what we're really looking for is some type of scaled down version. We heard from the community that the idea of having the picnic pavilions and stuff that were sort of situated at the top is not something predominantly that the community really thought that they were interested in. And so we're happy not to build it. And so what I wanted to impress upon the committee tonight is that it's very possible that the amount that we asked for, which is $300,000, could be decreased. And a lot of that has to do with how much is going through for capital as well for fiscal year 22. But I wanted to assure at least the committee that we don't plan on spending more than what the community wants to see. And we're seeing some escalation in some of the contracts because of supply and demand. But I know that we've talked to a couple of people from the Architectural Access Bureau, and they are not inclined to grant us a permit to open to the public if we are for a third year going to be non-compliant. And so I think we need to just have that discussion as a community and understand the ramifications of that and go from there. But we're very much ongoing. And I'm just going to use this opportunity to say that December 16th at 6:30 is another forum that we're going to have within several updated plans. And also we've asked for a full tree survey so we could show people that we're actually only planning on removing somewhere between 11 and 15 trees, 8 of which are dead. And I think that that's an important thing to allow people to know. And I've asked for them to provide pictures so people know that, you know, we're really trying to invest in a reforestation. And so the only other thing besides ADA and sustainability that we'd like to do is put in about $50,000 to $75,000 for reforestation for every tree we remove. We'd like to replace it at a 4-to-1, even though our standard in town is a 3-to-1. We'd like to up that a bit. So I'm really hopeful that after December's meeting, people will kind of know that we're listening, we're hearing, and we don't want to overdo anything. We just want to make sure that we can open and have everybody be able to access it equally.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Other questions for open space and recreation category? John? And
On
then-
the rifle range application, there's no money here. I want to be sure I'm correct. There's no money here for the construction or the reconstruction or the improvements of the widening and possible boardwalks. That would come back to the CPC or be done in-house?
So this is Delia Kay, Natural Resources Director for the town. Hi, John. Thanks for the question. There is no money in the application. This is just a request for survey design and permitting. Construction funding would be looked for elsewhere. CPC would be a likely source of funding. I had submitted this with the Trails Committee to the state for a permit for the granting of the survey design and permitting, which was not funded, which is why I'm now coming to CPC for that request. I would put it again to the state. It's a small project for the state. You know, a 1/4 mile trail improvement is not something that is hugely appealing to them when they're dealing with many, many projects from across the Commonwealth. And there are few other projects, funds available for these sorts of projects. So I do anticipate if it is funded, that I would come back to CPC to request construction funds.
Thank you, Delia. Thank you, John. Nancy, did you have a question?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, excuse me. And Diane, are you all set? I thought somebody's hand was up.
I did ask it. I did. I just want to thank Kate for her, Kate Hanley, for her explanation tonight and the flexibility in response to the public. I think that is incredibly impressive and appreciated.
Thank you, Diane. Matt?
I just wanted to follow up on Kate's statement and just ask a clarifying question, which was that, Kate, you explained that putting the accessible parking down by the beach doesn't meet the town's needs and it doesn't meet the Architectural Access Board's requirements. And I guess as a just uninformed member of the public, I went down there and looked, and there seems like there's quite a bit of space, and especially 50 feet or more from the shore, so outside of the no disturb and even no build zones, that additional parking as well as drainage could be constructed. So I guess just not being understanding this, I'd love to hear why this can't be accommodated, because it just seems like it would be more convenient for folks that do have accessibility problems to not have to navigate all the way down from above, as well
Sure.
as less disturbance to the hillside.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we're dealing with, particularly with the Architectural Access Board, is and it's just so you know, so that you can look it up. It's Chapter 521 of the Code of Mass Regulations, and I certainly will not quote from that because it's literally hundreds of pages. But if you go somewhere in the page 90 to 140, which is still a great deal of pages, I recognize, but it'll spell it out for you, certainly better than I can. But essentially, what we have is the equivalent of somewhere between 74 and 80 spaces, depending on leaves and debris. And so that requires that we have 4 accessible spaces, one of which has to be a van space. And so we're competing with two separate things. One is as a safety issue. When we did a staff review before and then immediately following taking possession of the parcel, one of the things that was remarked and has been a real issue for the past two seasons that we've been running it is having accessibility for police and fire and ambulance to be able to come down and have a place to park near the water's edge. And part of that is because we don't have a pull-off that they can back up an ambulance or anything of that nature. And so their request was that they preferred two, but at least one of the spots that's down below be turned into an emergency access temporary parking space only. And we would like to be able to comply with that for obvious reasons. The other is because we need to fix the code compliant stairs, and the Architectural Access Board requires that when we have features that are, top to bottom. So the Architectural Access Board doesn't simply allow for one area that we can say, okay, if you need access, you can park here. They say that all program spaces must have equal access, and the stairs are in fact a programmed access. And so what they're talking about at the Access Board is not necessarily someone in a wheelchair, but perhaps somebody that uses a cane or a walker or has some other impairment. And so all walkways and features per code have to have accessible routes that are consistent and have hard packed or paved surfaces. And so because we have stairs that are providing egress from the top of the parcel to the water edge, we also need to have mirroring accessibility from the top of the parcel to the water's edge.
But I mean, the stairs are simply to provide access to the parking there. And if all the accessible parking is not up there, I can't understand how that could be considered a program space. The other thing is that the parking across the way, that's the state parking for the fishing and other uses. I mean, isn't that also potentially usable by our emergency vehicles for turnaround? I mean, I see there are already 2 accessible parking spaces down below, and then, there's a significant amount of space behind the lifeguard shed, that hasn't been developed yet. It just seems strange to me that there's not a way to accommodate all of these uses.
Well, we aren't allowed to.
Have you tried it? I mean, I guess it's,
Yeah.
out.
Mr. Johnson, I've been working on this project for the better part of 3 years. So I absolutely have tried and heard and tried to do my best to, do as much as I can to try to fit things where they are. We have a lot of other code compliance issues if we were going to be putting other ADA spots in, that we would have to basically cut into the side of where the access road comes down, put a retaining wall there, which would create another impervious surface, and we would have to enlarge the stormwater drains that are going to go below that. So it's not just as simple as putting a parking space one place. Also, the Architectural Access Board requires that if you have any type of ADA parking spot that's going to be near any place that's elevated that could pool water or have any kind of slippery surface, we need to have a drain system that's in there as well. And so it seems like the less expensive and more compliant thing to do would be to have some up top. Additionally, I don't make the rules of the ADA access, but we absolutely have to have, whether we believe or want to argue whether the stairs are program space or not, they're utilized by members of the public to be able to access one part of the parcel to the other. And so we're obligated via the Access Board to be able to provide equal access both from the top to the bottom. And it isn't just relative to someone that's in a wheelchair, but it's talking about people with multiple levels of mobility issues, either permanent or non-permanent. And the other thing is that we need 4 spots, and our access agreement and usage agreement with the state does not allow us to be able to consider the 5 spots when you come down and that are on the right-hand side as part of the towns. Not only that, we don't have an agreement to be able to modify those, and those need to be open and accessible for any fisher person or someone who is having a boat per the order of the State Department of Fishery and Wildlife. And so we're not allowed to actually take those into account either for temporary emergency parking or permanent. That's a state issue. And it's the regulations that go with having a great pond.
Kate, thank you. Matt, thank you for the good questions. Other questions or comments with regard to open space and recreation?
Delia, do you have your hand raised for something?
I do. Thank you, Heather. I just wanted to reiterate something that Kate had mentioned on the stormwater management, the improvements associated with improving the boat launch. We looked at this during the 2015 watershed management plan that was developed for White Pond. And in addition to erosion at Sachem's Cove, the runoff that was coming down the access road was identified in that plan as one of the major contributors of stormwater runoff into White Pond. And as I think everybody on this call knows, the stormwater runoff, which has phosphorus and other nutrients and sediments and metals and other things, are a major component of the cyanobacteria that White Pond has been experiencing over the past number of years. So there was, the White Pond Associates in the 70s, 80s, 90s, I don't recall when it was, but it was, 20 plus years ago, had worked to install some stormwater management features at the base of the boat launch. They are so undersized that in any storm event that is greater than, just a mere trickle. So, yesterday's storm event, if you went out there and you saw what was happening at those stormwater management basins, nothing was going in and getting treated and infiltrated into the stormwater management system that exists there now. It was all running into the pond with all of the accumulated sediments and pollutants associated with that. So what, Kate is bringing forward with this plan is, I think anything that you do out there is going to be a tremendous improvement towards the health of the pond. And I just wanted to put that forward as something for the committee to keep in mind, that if we want to protect the ecological health of the pond, which I think everybody does, both from an ecological standpoint as well as a recreational standpoint, that you can't swim if it's full of blue-green algae blooms. It was 2016 or 16, I think, that pond was closed almost the entire summer because of blue-green blooms. We finished in 2019 the slope restoration project at Sachem's, and this year I was very interested to see that the blooms we still had blooms, but they were very brief and they came and they went very quickly. So they haven't gone away. There's still more work to do there, but that work at Sachem's Cove, which was funded by CPC, thank you, has made a big difference, in my opinion. We're going to do some additional water quality monitoring to understand, what that means over the long term. But I think it's just important to put that stormwater management feature component into context, that it's really, that whatever can be done to improve that chute of stormwater runoff into White Pond is going to be a benefit.
Thank you, Delia. Delia,
Thank you.
Yeah, while you have the screen here, I have a request. Last time with regard to Warner's Pond dredging, there was a question that came up with regard to NMI. And I think you or maybe others were going to do just a little bit of research. And I know there has been a little bit of correspondence. Could you just provide a kind of summary overview of our current understanding?
Sure. So as we're currently proposing the project, it's dredging approximately 35,000 cubic yards of material from the pond. And the idea is that we've had initial testing that has been determined to be clean, except for one high hit out of several dozen that were done for lead. Assuming that it's all clean, it would be transported to the MCI prison farm fields where they've agreed to accept it for use in amending their farm fields as fertilizer. There was a suggestion made by Matt Johnson at one of the hearings recently to bring that fill instead to StarMet. And CPC member Judy Zonbrecker suggested selling it so that it offsets some of the cost. So I have reached out to the NMI project manager. I have not heard back yet. I think given the Thanksgiving holiday, I'm not sure, but I haven't heard back yet. I also spoke with the consultant who did our dredging feasibility study on, what that likelihood was and what it might mean financially. And with, as he said, assuming that you have, let's just say 30,000 yards. And he, essentially he said you could anticipate a cost savings of $300,000 to $500,000, depending on how it's negotiated and whether it's acceptable, and a whole host of criteria that we're not, we're just scratching the surface of now. But I think there's certainly a possibility that some of the project cost could be brought down. If $300,000 is more than 10% of the projected project cost for this.
Thank you, Delia. Other questions or comments about open space and recreation category? Seeing none, seeing no hands up, ready to move to the open space category. We have two projects. The first one is the Chamberlain Park Bridge survey and permitting. And the request is for $35,000, and this is to conduct the survey and obtain approval from NRC to replace the structure, which is 40 years old. The second project is the Emerson conservation restriction. And the request is for $210,000 with an additional matching $355,600. And this is the purchase of a conservation restriction for this particular area that we've discussed between Emerson House and Haywood Meadow. Okay, those were our two projects. Thank you, Heather. So for the open space category, questions or comments on Chamberlain Park Bridge or Emerson conservation restriction? Don't see hands up. Nancy?
I have a short question, I think, for Delia. If there was any interest in pursuing the idea of somewhat expanded access flexibility for future trails or things that we're not thinking about yet. That was brought up at one of the meetings. I just wondered where that was, what you think about it.
I apologize, Nancy. That one fell off my radar. So
sorry.
No, don't apologize. My bad.
You got a little on your mind.
So Heather, do you by any chance have those maps associated? And if you don't, I don't expect that you would, but I actually might.
I can pull them up. Just give me a minute.
Okay. So I think, Nancy, that there's not a whole lot of room to do a lot with additional trails in that area. This particular parcel, I mean, you might be able to come in behind the gun house.
Some kind of connections to existing trails in the new part of that's now NRC land under NRC jurisdiction.
This will secure that connection.
Okay.
We purchased last year parcel B and lot 5.
Right.
And that was the majority of the Emerson Borough Amble as it left Haywood Meadow and came to So here's Haywood Meadow here.
Yeah.
The cart path. This was formerly Emerson land that was purchased last year. And yellow is the amble. So this is really the last little piece. We do have a revocable easement that allows the public to traverse this. But if the Emerson Association were to sell off this parcel as a buildable lot,
so down
way, and this is soaking wet, it would be really, you can engineer anything, and you could put a bridge there certainly, but it's a bridge. It's not just little, boardwalks, catwalk or duck walks that we have out there.
That whole area is wet with sort of boardwalks. A lot.
Correct.
Yeah, so it would
This
be
is
just like
boardwalks extend from about this point to
all the way,
gosh, almost to about here. And it's dry for a little bit. And then we've got the first bridge here and a secondary bridge further down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's a lovely, lovely trail. And every time I see people on it, they remark on its beauty.
Yeah.
Judy.
Just a quick question on the Emerson conservation restriction. There's matching funds or other funds from other sources. It's from the town capital budget. Have those already been appropriated, or is that in the budget for this upcoming town meeting?
Do you want me to take that? So again, Kate Hodges, the capital budget requests are actually due to the finance director, or I'm sorry, the chief financial officer and the town manager this Friday. I can tell you that for the last several years, I've handled the capital budget, and I'm going to be doing that again. And so, yes, the money is still in there as it's being proposed, as is the Warner's Pond dredging. That said, there's a process that it goes through where we obviously we bring it in front of both the finance committee and the select board, and we're sort of flying blind a bit here because we're not quite sure what's going to happen with state aid and some of the other things. So I think we're trying to give priority to capital projects that are already underway or ones that are in a certain phase, and trying to get it to a place where it's stable. But so currently, yes, it's in, it will be represented. We can't make any promises, and obviously it's ultimately up to the voters. But yes, they're both represented in there.
Okay, thank you.
And just to add a little bit to that, because this is new information that we just received a few days ago. The Land Trust, when we had initially approached them about contributing to this project, as they had done for the prior application over Parcel B and Lot 5, they had initially said no, because it was, it was a building lot, and it wasn't so much a conservation piece as the other two parcels were. But they informed me a couple of days ago that they are willing to contribute $25,000 to the acquisition of this, mainly because of the importance of ensuring that the Emerson Thoreau Amble route is maintained in its current condition, but also to, have there, as everybody knows, they're a very strong partner with the town, and, they value that, and this was a demonstration of that value. My recommendation is that money comes out of what would come out of the capital budget, because we're in such, who knows what FY22 is going to look like. So the CPC request would not change, but the amount that the town pays for the acquisition of that does change, is reduced by the 25,000 that is being donated by CLCT.
Thank you, Delia. Matt.
Just on the question of valuation for the Emerson conservation restriction, I think at the last meeting we heard that in response to the question about how the conservation restriction cost was higher than the assessed value of the property, that the conservation restrictions cost was based upon an appraisal, which is significantly higher than the assessment. And I guess just as I think about that, I mean, our town's policy, of course, is for assessed value to be 100% of the property value. And while there are, differences, they're considered to be kind of a problem by the Board of Assessors, and they seek to minimize those differences on an ongoing basis. And so I guess I'm just still concerned about the wide variation of value between the appraisal and the assessment, and just, I don't know whether the assessor has a view on this or what, because it does seem like an awfully big deviation.
I have spoken with Lane Partridge, who is the town assessor, about assessments in general versus appraisals, and assessments and appraisals of this specific parcel. Assessed values will almost always be lower than an appraised value. They're behind in terms of timing, and they look at a town-wide level. So they're looking at it from a 20,000, height, whereas when you go to appraise a specific parcel, you are looking only at that specific parcel. And speaking as the Natural Resources Director who deals with the Wetlands Conservancy District on a daily basis, maybe this is helpful for some people, but that layer it's an estimation, right? So it was developed at some point in the past. It says this is what the wetlands are estimated to be town-wide. When we have people come in for permits from the Natural Resources Commission, they're required to get an on-the-ground wetland survey that specifically delineates where the wetlands are on that parcel. That's exactly, and I talked with Lane about that, and he said that's exactly the same way that we have things done in terms of assessments versus appraisals. So an assessment is the best guess that you can give based on the market conditions from, a year and a half ago, town-wide. And then your appraisal is looking at what your conditions are for that parcel at this specific point in time. And it's going to give you a more accurate assessment or a more accurate value of the property.
Thank you, Delia. Are we ready to move on to our last category? Anything else on open space? Okay, let's go to administration. And this is staff and technical support. It's a request of $40,000. And this is funding for staff support and the related services and supplies. And I think this was the similar request from last year. Any questions or comments on the administration category, staff and technical support? Seeing none. Thank you. We've now moved through all of our categories and all of our applications. And are there any follow-up public discussion or other comments or questions about any of the applications? Mary.
I just wanted to bring us back to our original conversation about the $500,000 or the $1 million that's been appropriated at town meetings through free cash for affordable housing. And what kind of approvals that needs in order to be spent if an opportunity came up. And apparently I looked at the warrant, and the article says that it's under the direction of the town manager and the select board. So I just wanted to clarify that because that was an open question. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ray. We appreciate that. Any other questions or comments about any of our applications or questions for our applicants? All right. Well, with that, I'd like to close the public hearing section of our agenda, and we are going to move to our public meeting. All right, Heather, how'd I do? I think it's as simple as that. No vote required, huh? Okay. Oh, good. So now we are going to be in the public meeting section of the agenda. This is really focused on deliberations and trying to move us toward recommendations. One, I think, report that I have, and maybe Heather can supplement this a little bit. We have not yet received prioritizations from the select board nor the town manager. However, it sounds like maybe some of that work has been happening.
Yeah, and I could probably provide an update because from our meeting.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So, well, an update would be, when do you think we might receive that?
Well, I could share on this meeting if you'd like.
We usually get a written document from the select board office.
I guess.
And I suspect that will be forthcoming. But, you know, in the meantime, we did meet in public and we did come up with our rankings and, you know, as groups, and this town manager has also submitted his, so I could share those if they're helpful.
Well, I think that I'd recommend for your consideration and our consideration, I think if we receive those this week, so the committee and other members of the public can review those, it'll be good information as input for our meeting next Tuesday on the 8th. And we'll have likely a couple more rounds. The 8th and the 15th are scheduled. And so I think if we have the information, I don't know if it'll influence us too much this evening, but that would be a recommendation for people's consideration. But I'm generally, open to whatever we think would be best.
Yeah, and I should just mention from a methodology point of view, what the select board decided to do was, rather than have individual rankings, that we had batches of 3 batches of 4 projects, that we ranked as group 1, group 2, group 3 in terms of the order of preference.
Oh, great. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Tom?
Yeah, Diane.
Yeah, I was just going to say exactly what Matt just said. I would also add that the select board, they had their numbers compiled, but one person had not been able to add them. So there was discussion about the inclusion of those votes, that I would love to see it in print, so that we have a chance to really deliberate in advance. And so I hope that when that arrives, that somebody can send it out to the members of the committee.
Yeah, and this does include the last rankings do include Terry's votes.
Oh yeah, perfect. So I think
I present that, Matt, but I'm just saying that it was during the meeting, Terry's was added. And
yes, it was.
It was just hard if you didn't have a visual presentation to kind of know how things were looking. So I would appreciate it.
Yeah, Diane, I agree. I think it's going to be most efficient and effective if we'll get that in writing, we'll digest it and be able to, and it'll take a little bit of the pressure off you, Matt, to have to recall all that. So that's very, very helpful. I think if we have that as input to our next round, I think my feeling is that'll be timely enough. Typically, we don't get it in our kind of first round of deliberations.
Okay, it is a spreadsheet that I could just share through Zoom, but if you'd prefer not to,
I think I'd prefer to have it come through Heather and then be distributed and end up, in the right public forum. Heather, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's how we've always done it in the past. So I think we should probably stick with that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, Matt, thanks so much for offering that. That's helpful. And I'm sure you'll have some perspective that'll help us there too as well. All right. So this is discussion around current applications, new materials received, and our potential recommendations. And my recommendation to the committee is that we use our updated matrix as a guide, as we did last time. As everyone will remember, on the 17th, we were together and we took a first kind of pass at the group to just determine where we had some commonalities. I think Peter helped us with determining some buckets, which were kind of fully fund, partially fund, no fund, as a way to start, and where we had enough information or we needed additional questions. So we established some buckets. And if that seems reasonable, Heather, do you think is that something we could share?
Yes, it looks like Judy might have a question first.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, Judy and then Diane.
Yeah, I have a question just to make sure I understand the funding that is available for us to allocate. And the total amount of funding we have available is the 1,725,719 plus the prior year balance, correct?
That's my understanding. I think it's at least the number I have is 1,769,891.
Okay. And then my other question is that when we determine the percentages that have to be allocated to the different areas, is that based upon that 1769 amount? Or is it the total 1.1870 amount?
The 1.7.
The 1.7, okay. And so is it the current revenue that we got for this year, or does it include the prior year balance?
Question.
That I don't know that off the top. That would be a little clarification. That
I think it would probably just be the new revenue number.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So more like a 172 number. Yes, Diane.
Thank you, Tom. I don't know when you want to discuss this, so I just need a kind of a process question. I have some questions philosophically about what we can consider and what we don't, what we should consider and what we don't need to consider, or what is in relationship to certain projects. And I would use, for example, the Wright Tavern. We have heard from one representative of the HDC, we've heard from Melissa, that they're concerned about what the purpose of this is, and that massive public access may be at variance with historic preservation. My question is, to what degree is it the responsibility of the CPC to consider programming and how it's being used, except that there is public access? You know, to what degree is that an important consideration as we determine funding sources, amounts, or percentages? And this is only my second year on the committee, so I don't know the answer to that. I would love to hear at some point how we think about that. Thank you.
Well, you started, Diane, by talking about process, and I was imagining that we might have our matrix up and move through the projects. We can certainly take them in any particular order that is most effective. My response to that question, just as a philosophical one, is I think we take all the context into account to determine appropriateness for use of taxpayer dollars given our guidelines. So I think all of that context matters if it influences the application relative to our guidelines. I think I think we'll be able to probably have a more specific conversation around some of
I
the.
was just using that as an example, Tom. I mean,
Yeah,
I think there are other kind of broader process questions, and so you want to do it as we approach each project. That's all I want to understand.
We're democracy here, so.
Yeah, I'm very easy. I wasn't sure. You said review of current applications and any new materials and discussion of potential recommends. So I was just good by the chart, and that's fine with me. I just wanted to.
Everybody okay to go to the chart? Or anybody else want to make any other general comments before we do that?
Just had one. This is Peter. I have one more question. At what point will we, if at all, ask for outside counsel to, come into the process? Will that be to look at the applications, or will it be upon our having come forward with our recommendations that ultimately would go into the warrant?
I have requested that review already. I have not received anything back yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Peter, it's also a very good question. It's another really important input for us. And as we think about the dates that we've reserved, both tonight, next Tuesday, and the following, I think we also need to kind of line that up with the kinds of inputs we're hoping for select board, town manager, town council, so we don't get out to the end of our deliberations without all the perspectives that we need to make informed recommendations. So I don't know, Heather, we don't have an update on the timing of that. Maybe.
No, I'll send an email tomorrow to the select board office, just requesting the select board's memo, the town manager's memo, and town council, and try to get a timeline on those.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Peter. Any other general questions about our process? Good ones. Heather, do you want to put up the grid and let's see how it serves us? Okay, now I'm going to try to see this and see everybody's faces at the same time. See how I do with that. All right, so Heather has organized this in the same categories that we just went through, right? Community housing, 3 projects, historic preservation, 4 projects, etc. We have so the numbers are similar to your agendas. The application code 5-20 is there because I know tracking these things it gets a little confusing, but these are organized the way they would be presented in a warrant article and grouped so we can begin to track our minimums. We have the amount requested. I hope these numbers are correct. And we have then this next category, looks like column I, which represents at least nominally some of the work we did on the 17th. This is an active matrix. And so Heather can make adjustments to this. We can look at the bottom line and see how we're doing with this. So, and Heather, is that about as large as it goes? Everybody okay? Can everybody see it okay?
Yeah, can everyone see this okay? I can zoom in more, but then you get less vertically, so it's up to you.
Everybody okay?
Yeah.
All right. What does the group think about taking it from the top and seeing if we have a kind of alignment or critical questions or proposals for funding? Okay, to give that a go. See, looks like everybody's good. Burton, you okay?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, good. So we have got the housing production plan, $30,000. The last time I think we were together, we asked for some historical perspective on those costs. Marcia, I think, presented those this evening, and we were at $30,000. Valuable, timely, 5 years plus 1 additional year for the census. Any discussion about this one?
I have a question. I think my notes say that the last one was about $12,000 to $15,000. So I wonder if this is a little bit of maybe overestimated, or did the 30,000 number come up?
I think
I
what
missed-
I heard is that they're going to be dealing with new census data.
Yeah, it takes a
With-
little longer.
And so that's going to take longer and I believe more resources to do versus the last one.
Marcia, is there a little contingency in here?
There is some contingency, but this is based on the actual cost of the town of Acton's housing production plan that was completed last year in 2019. So I simply used that actual number.
So that's a good number.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Marcia.
Okay.
Good question. Other questions about application number 1? Seeing none, although I'm not sure I have everybody on my screen. Looks like everybody okay? Great. Okay with the 30,000. Fully fund. Let's get that work done. Application number 2, Regional Housing Services Program. It's $25,000. Last time, I think we said fully fund and there was a town match. Burton, did you have a comment?
No, giving the thumbs up on the RHSP.
Thank you. Other questions, comments about this? How's everybody feeling? Excellent. Nice work. Okay. Number 3 is the affordable housing Buydown. And as I recall, on the 17th, we said, let's plug a number in there and work through our overall set of recommendations and see where we end up. But do I have that right?
Yep.
Seems right.
Any questions or comments about this or recommendations? Diane?
I was taken by Mary's question, Mary Hartman's question about available funding. We all obviously care deeply about affordable housing, but if we've already, I'd like to know more fully what the aggregate funding is for the housing authority to be able to buy and purchase available housing, affordable housing in the town, kind of when it's quickly available. And I don't think that going to the town manager and going to the select board should be a big impediment. I mean, that should be able to be done, reasonably quickly. So I would just like to understand what that aggregate funding is and to see what kind of an increase it represents over time.
750.
If we could get that information, I just think it would be helpful.
Okay, Heather, do you have that request? Good shape. Okay. Yeah, Judy.
I get the one thing I noticed is that since these are the only 3 affordable housing projects, we either need to put aside about $117,000 in reserve or put it towards this project so that we meet the 10% minimum.
Right. Yes. Thank you, Judy. And what we've tried to do in the matrix is each category rolls up to the gray bar. And so you can maybe begin to see in that is it icon of the, the roll up of those numbers. Looks like it might be close.
Yeah, it actually takes it just a little bit over. So I just pointed it out that money, those amount of funds are either going to need to be allocated towards this project or put into reserve.
Yeah. And I did seem like we maybe received a little bit of additional information this evening about the 2019 and 2020 town meeting allocation.
Yeah. That was my question. Yeah.
And so there's maybe some additional context here that might be good to know. Nancy.
Are you talking about the reference to $750,000 that remains from town meeting appropriated funds that would have to go back to the next town meeting? Because that seems like not a long wait. But if that's a real number that could be applied to affordable housing, that's a helpful figure.
Yeah, that I agree. I think that's what I was thinking. And if we come back around, I guess it's going to be next June, but maybe that.
Well, my understanding is that money, if I understood Mary correctly, that $750,000 could be appropriated based upon town manager and select board approval. It didn't need to come back to town meeting.
Oh, okay.
That's what I recall hearing Mary Hartman mention, looking at
the
warrant. I do have a note that says maybe.
Yeah, no, she did do that additional research.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's good. There are some other funds there that may be available and somewhat nimble and flexible. Okay, any other questions about application number 3? Good, thank you. Let's go to number 4, and this is the flagpole at Emerson Field. And last time we were at fully fund. Anybody
I will support that.
Everybody in good shape here?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, very good, nice. Number 5 is Concord Home for the Aged. And the last time, I believe, there was quite a bit of discussion here. I think where we ended up was, let's plug the fully fund number in here. I believe that's where we are. I don't want to be presumptuous, but any questions or comments about this, reflections?
I just have one question on where historic preservation projects also support other goals and priorities of the town, like this one, like Wright's Tavern, like others that I'm sure will come before us. You know, how the question came up earlier tonight with respect to something. How long will CPC be expected to keep funding the maintenance requirements of these projects, which are historic preservation, but also have other sources of income and whatnot? So I think it's a bigger question.
Yeah, I think it is a good one, Nancy. Yes, thank you. Diane?
And Tom, I don't know how to balance this. This was one of the process questions, so thank you for indulging me for just a moment. I was at a select board meeting in which it was mentioned that as they were discussing this list, so I said, well, I'm not sure that's really the best use of that property. And so there was some backing and forthing about how else it might be used. And that's the reason I ask, whether it is what we're addressing in that house. I mean, it doesn't need to be structurally changed in order for it to be a stable facility. And if we're doing things internally to it in any way, are those internal renovations ones that look at its present need or its future needs? Who deliberates on that? Who considers it? And is it any of our business in our deliberations? And I don't know the answer to any of those questions.
Diane, I'm sorry, the select board was questioning the present use for the Concord Home for the Aged?
Yes, they were wondering. I mean, it was a question about, I'm not sure this is the best use of that property. You've got a few people in there. It's not fully.
I find that troubling.
I almost fall out of my chair when you say that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I didn't find it troubling. I'm saying that there was that discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to speak up for this.
Because anybody can watch it and see it. So my question is the degree to which that has in any way, do we pay attention to that? Does it matter to us? Or do we presume that that Anita and the group that have been doing such fine work there, and we just move forward like this and say, all right, that's how it's going to go. And so I'm curious about that.
Well, I mean, they've been doing such fine work there for, what is it, over 100 years?
Yeah.
Right. And I would have said that this project checks two big boxes for me, because I think in this particular year, I'm focused on community housing, perhaps more than historic preservation or open space or what have you. I think there's a lot of people who are in a bad situation and will be this year, next year, what have you. And as a policy matter, I think it's important to focus on that. And when I remember going through the Concord Home for the Aged in the past couple of years when we were able to do a site visits, and in my mind, I was thinking about the quotes I had recently gotten for assisted living facilities for my mother. And what they're doing there at the price they're doing for residents of Concord to be able to put them into that home and provide them a group living situation. In my mind, this is more about community housing, and it's an incredible resource that they're doing on a shoestring budget, but also being really thoughtful about the building. Questions about whether this is the best use of the building, I frankly find offensive.
Well, I didn't want to, one observer, select board, one doesn't step in and comment unless there's something that one feels that needs to kind of be said. But I was rather surprised, Burton, and I just, I don't know what kind of planning there is in the town. Who owns that structure? Does the town own it? No, it's owned by the corporation, right? That is helping to guide it. And
if I could speak, this is Anita. It is owned by the corporation, and it was the land and the building were purchased in 1887 by a nonprofit group, through a donation, and they were able to purchase it through a donation of a Miss Hunt. But it's specifically for housing for poor people in Concord. And originally it was for people who were retired servants, that were people working in many of the larger homes in Concord. Once they got too old to work in service, many of them had lived in Concord for many, many years, but then didn't have a place to live. And that the original people who lived there were in that category. But we have absolutely no interest, nor do we have any legal right, without totally disbanding our corporation, to do anything other than what we're doing now with that property.
Thank you, Anita. Judy.
Yeah, I guess I'm like Burton. I'm highly offended that is being brought up in that way. It strikes me that if we start looking at these properties and say, well, we could get, somebody could make more money, or whatever it is, we almost become like a Potemkin village with colonial architecture. And I recall from the Concord Long Range Plan, one of the most important things to our community included was town character. Now, one can say town character is just physically how it looks, but it seemed to me, as people in town were talking about it, it was not only how the town looked, but also the institutions behind a lot of those buildings. And I think it is it's historic preservation on the building, but there also is a history here, whether it's this one, or quite frankly, the Masonic Lodge. They are historic organizations with deep roots in our history in our town. And I think it benefits the community and preserving our character to help them stay in those buildings and have them be preserved historically.
I could not agree more. I just wondered, there are a few issues like that I felt needed.
Yeah, thank you, Diane. I want to also not repeat anything that was said, but absolutely agree. I think there's a model here, and the work of the leadership team, from my point of view, to be commended. I think there's a model for people in different chapters of their lives of how to work to live together and also be stewards of the important pieces of architecture, in town centers. It's really quite remarkable. I just wanted to add that the approach that this applicant has taken over years has been extremely kind of sensitive and deliberative and transparent, and they've communicated so well at every step of the way. And I just think that for me is culminated in all the letters of support that I read. That it's obvious that this is a big community that is supportive of this program. So,
Peter, I'd like to follow up on what Tom just mentioned. Several years ago, the Timothy Wheeler House came to the CPC and talked about what they saw needing to do down the road and asked for our feedback. And the feedback was to start with the historic structures report, which is exactly what happened. And then that was followed up with the architectural design and construction documents, which of course we're now seeing the fruits of those efforts. So it's been a very logical and deliberate approach to the structure itself. So I think that's something that needs to be taken into account.
Thank you, Peter. Any other comments?
Yeah, Hester, I just have one quick comment about what Judy said, which is, again, I absolutely agree, but also to add that thinking about town character, which you so carefully reference, there's also the other definition of character having to do with, ethics and morality. And I think that is also something that this home, our number 5, has done very well and demonstrates something that we can be proud of.
Tom, I do have some questions on whether or not you're taking public comment now. So that's up to you whether or not you want to take public comment as you guys have discussions or wait until you're done discussing the matrix.
Well, we are certainly interested in getting clarifications and responses from our applicants. I think that's been happening.
These are not from an applicant, so it would be a public comment or question.
I think generally our process has been over these evenings to find a moment after we've heard from the committee to ask if there are any comments from the public. So if I may, just any other comments from the committee? Heather, does that seem in order?
Yeah, so it's up to you whether after each discussion item or if you want to wait until the very end.
Yeah, we've moved through the first 4 pretty efficiently. Let's any other committee comments on the Concord Home for the Aged, and then we will open up. Burton.
Yeah, just a quick comment to follow up on what you said, Tom, about the thoughtfulness with which they've gone through the process. One thing that I don't know that it's really reflected in the application, but it was my sense in prior visits, is the amount of contributions in kind from people who are associated with the Concord Home for the Aged in terms of developing a plan, look at the architectural input, historical input that they've gotten, which, oftentimes we look at the value of additional contributions, financial contributions, but this was a case where I thought they're getting a huge amount of value from people who are volunteering their time that's maybe not reflected in the numbers.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much, Burton. Okay, is that it for the committee? Members of the public, any comments about Concord Home for the Aged?
Yes, please. Tanya Galis, 62 Prescott Road, and I have actually had the honor and privilege of having elderly friends stay there, and I have very much appreciated the service and comfort they have received there, and I think it's a very precious resource to preserve for the town, so I wanted to add that comment. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, we are ready to move on. Thank you. I think we're okay with our allocation recommendation, preliminary as it is. And we are on number 6.
I would like to make a comment, please.
Hi, Linda. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you for a well-run evening, as usual, in terms of your committee deliberations. I would just like to comment, because I feel compelled to do this, that I felt that the comment about the select board somehow saying that this was an inappropriate use, Timothy Wheeler, is not representative of the conversation that the select board had. I do believe that perhaps at least one member questioned whether or not some of the endowment should be used for this project. But beyond that, certainly there was no disparaging remarks about the work of the Timothy Wheeler.
Linda, and Susan, I've got a note from Susan as well. Linda, I'm not saying that the select board was disparaging. I said there was a question about the future use of that building, is what I said.
I didn't hear the future use. I heard the.
What I said is, I believe what I said is what I meant to say is that my question was, I understood from a comment in the select board that the future use of the building might be in question. And so my question was to the degree to which we take that into consideration or not. I think that's been clarified.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say who said it, but somebody did. And it was, and I'm not trying to in any way, you should know that, I'm not trying in any way to malign the select board. I'm suggesting that something was suggested. And I
apologize if I misunderstood the comment, but I didn't in any way want those comments to reflect the select board as a whole.
No, I didn't think they did, Linda. It was one person, and it was almost an aside, but it caused me to think, all right, these are the kind of things we take into consideration, just as we heard. Well, never mind. Okay.
Well, I'd like to follow up on this, because when Diane brought this up first, I thought that she was talking about a meeting like years ago, because I couldn't understand the context from recent meetings. I wanted to mention, and again, I don't know if Diane's referring to me, but that my question was whether the business model of the Timothy Wheeler House was sustainable. And that was strictly the focus of my question. It wasn't whether it was an appropriate use, it was whether there was a business model in place that was going to sustain this over time, especially when we're talking about funding simple maintenance for the building, and that I felt that really they needed a sustainable financial model. So if that's what you were referring to, that was my intent and my comment.
Yeah, Matt, thank you. And Linda, thank you for those clarifications.
Yeah, thank you for all the work you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And this group has talked to the applicants about the endowment and contributions from or preserving of, and there's been a very good discussion related to that I think was handled well by the applicants. So thank you. This is getting to the depth of our conversations, which we need to do with our taxpayer recommendations here. So thank you. Okay, so we are now solidly on the Masonic Corporation roof replacement. And the last time there was a bit of discussion that there hasn't been maybe any additional leaking from the last time we were together and toured. There was a discussion about material choice. I think Alec and the team produced some material that was requested by the committee. Do we have questions or comments from the committee on the Masonic Corporation proposal? Yes, John. John, are you unmuted?
Now I'm unmuted.
Thank you.
It sounded from Alex's comment that he wanted us to give him more guidance on what we preferred in the roofing. And it does occur to me that if we take up that offer, it will potentially affect his number.
Well, okay, so I'm glad you brought this up, John. I would suggest that this project had or has been before HDC and CHC. There are other town bodies that can deal with those kind of historic and aesthetic issues. I'm not sure that I feel like there's an application that's brought before us and we should be deliberating on that application. I'm not sure about us requesting a design change. I know, Nancy, you felt strongly about this, and I think it's worthy of some deeper discussion. Nancy.
You're on mute.
What Alex said tonight, I'm not sure if he's still here or not, but reassured me quite a bit. They're willing to go back to HDC if that seems to be the right thing to do. And that's the only thing I was asking was, would it be more appropriate? So they're willing to look at that. I'm satisfied that they will do that. He brought that back from their board. So
I think maybe, John, your point related to that is that going to change the structure of their financial pro forma here, and their request?
I think he said it was not a huge amount of difference. And I was wondering if it couldn't be extracted maybe from the balance with the HSR, something like that. Or they would take that up.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Judy?
I guess the question I have is when we say we make the recommendation to fully fund the request, is that does that request have to be specific? Not that we make the decisions, but specific to the building material of the shingles, or is it specific to we say we've given them our input that GB9, can you look at wood shingles, but is it contingent on that it has to be wood shingles? I guess that's what I'm not clear about, is that do we get down to that specificity on what we
agree with you, Judy. I feel like we are potentially recommending funding of the roof replacement, and the aesthetic appropriateness and historic appropriateness has got to run through our other committees, and we want their support for it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And there is probably a timing issue. And I know, Heather, you connect to those committees as well. I mean, you have any perspective on the timing of all that?
Nothing's been requested of the HDC as of yet.
Not a letter of support?
No.
They made a recommendation though, didn't they? They approved something for the roof. They approved the artificial slate.
Correct. When when they had an application. And I believe there may have been a letter of support when this application first came through last year.
Mr. Chairman, this is Alec Wade again from the CMC Board of Directors and the lead applicant. I'm still here and I'd be happy to provide some dialogue to this as well and just kind of help fill the gaps here.
Yeah, I think we do have a bit of a process question, because I don't think we want to.
Yep, absolutely.
Take your application off track here. I want to just make sure we're careful in terms of our collective process.
Yeah, of course. And just real quick, I'll jump right back to John's question initially too. And I apologize if I made you guys feel like you had to make decisions on our application here. I think what Judy kind of mentioned as well is one of our concerns was that if the application was tied to a specific material, that puts us in a position where the HDC, when we go back, would then need to also approve at that time. So just the timeline of events. So when we came last year, the Historic Commission did give their letter of recommendation for this project. They did recommend it at the time. And that was, of course, just for the roof. I don't imagine they would have any concerns regarding the historic structures report, but it's a separate issue. When we then went to the HDC, we presented several options to them. We started with the initial asphalt shingles, which they were not a fan of for obvious reasons. We then proposed regular slate, synthetic slate, and a wood roof to them. We laid out all those options. And the one that they gravitated towards was the synthetic slate material. That's not to say, that's not to say we couldn't go back for the synthetic wood or regular wood. And then just as a quick aside too, while my board of directors is willing to consider this, I reached out to the chief of the Concord Fire Department because I did want to just get a weigh in from him, given the density of that neighborhood and the historic character of all the buildings.
Thank you.
Given the increased fire risk of cinder release, should there ever be a fire in our building, God forbid, we would not want to expose the remaining neighbors, which you might get an increased risk from. I didn't get a word back from him, but I will forward that along once I get an answer. I don't need you guys to pick the material for us. I apologize if I made you feel that I might be asking for that. We are open to the discussion and the dialogue. And I think our approach was once we get closer to the project actually happening and we know where the funding is lined up, we will go back to HDC to get either our extension or a modification. And at that time, we will finalize the material and move forward.
Yeah, okay, Alec, thank you so much for that. John.
Alec, can you live with this number regardless of the roof you eventually get approved?
Are you referring to the number? Are you asking if we can make this number that we applied for work even if we use the more expensive material?
Yes.
You know, I would love to submit a letter of request to modify our application, but Heather or Marcia, or maybe you, Mr. Chairman, would have to confirm if that's even allowed for us to ask to modify the number to a higher amount. If not, you know, we will take what we can get. We need money to fix this building and to make these improvements. And if we have to fundraise after the fact to fill a gap, then that's what we'll do.
To my knowledge,
Well, we know
you cannot change your application.
Okay. So then, yeah, ultimately, if we need to cover a financing gap, then we will work our hardest and we will fundraise as much as possible to cover it.
John.
I missed what Heather said.
To my knowledge, you cannot amend your application to request more money or change the scope of, change the scope of work dramatically after submitting your application.
We had an applicant last year that did exactly that.
Not to request more funding.
Well,
they just narrowed down their scope from what they submitted. So that's not adding or changing your scope. That's just narrowing it down, which is fine because it was in the original application.
Another question?
I just watched the kill. I saw the replay.
Somebody's mic is on.
Yeah.
Mine, but that's not me.
So, okay, Heather, yeah, just to restate, yeah, we're happy to see any changes in the total as long as those changes are downward and not upward. I also want to just thank this applicant for really working with the committee, listening to the committee, being very thoughtful about taking steps, even taking a gap year, if you will, or, and doing the hard work to answer the questions. of the group. It's been a good process. I think in the past, there's also been that history of working together collaboratively to execute initiatives. Which is, I think, one of our guideline requirements. So it's, well done there. Any other questions for the number 6 application and the fully fund status? Okay.
Tom, not a question, but just a comment to follow up on you, to acknowledge also that they're working with us over multiple cycles and being responsive to going back and getting more information and reconsidering things. And also, as a historic preservation project, this is a marquee property on the town square, and this is an exterior element. I appreciate that really the value is probably in protecting the structure of the building, but it's something that adds to the aesthetic of the town square ultimately, and is in that sense accessible to the public, and that's one reason I particularly like it.
Yeah, thank you, Burton. I think it has an architectural, primary architectural contribution, as well as obviously a cultural and historical contribution to the town. I think that I would agree that is important. Okay, good. Any additional questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, hearing none. Are we ready to move to Wright Tavern, number 7? Committee.
Yeah, I will step out.
Yeah, John, you're going to excuse yourself, and Heather will find a way to bring you back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Judy.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking to, I think Nancy might be an appropriate person to help comment on this, but I'm still struggling to pull apart the application and the budget on what is really needed to stabilize the structure. Because I would hate to have, a good gust of wind come through like, last night. And, we wake up in the morning and we find out that, the tavern is now leaning, 10 degrees to one side. So I certainly see that it's valuable to the town and to stabilize the structure. But it just continues to strike me that the budget that's been proposed goes beyond just a stabilization of the structure. And I guess that's where I would appreciate, someone like Nancy or other people who have more expertise in this area to kind of help me understand that.
Yeah, thank you, Judy. Nancy, any reflection you want to make, or other members of the committee?
This is going to be hard for me to summarize and get in a totally coherent order, but the short answer to your question is that I have read now most of the historic structures report. It's quite excellent, it's quite dense, and it's quite specific about how to repair and treat historic fabric, of which there's a lot. In terms of it falling down, I think there were a couple things in the structural engineering report and the building inspector report that need to be addressed soon, almost immediately. I don't think the structure is completely unsafe because of the intense use of for school programs that was there. But my issue is that as excellent as the HSR is, and the recommendations and the very specific guidance on how to treat and repair historic fabric in the building, there's a very big discrepancy, I think, in terms of what's being proposed as work and what's appropriate if, for example, they decided to use the second floor as sort of an open museum space. It's been altered a lot, but there's a lot of original fabric there and a lot of 1815 fabric, as I recall. And this is a big document, and I'm trying to get my vocabulary up to speed, as well as try to make a match with the inspector's report and the structural engineer's report. As I recall, the structural engineer assumed that the building was going to continue to be used the way it is. And that might drive more attention to something like a new HVAC system instead of a repair of an HVAC system. There's almost nothing that we can see specifically, for instance, also about how a sprinkler system would be installed throughout the building, and things like that have potential to drastically decrease the historical nature of a building and punch through holes and all that. And I'm not sure what behind the walls means, but one of the items, I think it must not be for the whole second floor, but the item to remove plaster from the attic ceilings and walls and on the second floor ceiling. I'm not sure how extensive the plaster removal is intended to be on the second floor. And there's a lot of historic fabric there. And the architect, the historical architect, has very specific and well-regarded ways to repair that instead of taking it all out and putting it back in. And the attic does have very old features from 1815. And as a preservationist, I can't help but see the attic clear of all the mechanical systems and everything that's up there, and imagine what it might be if one tried to bring back the sense of what those rooms must have been like up there, and same with the second floor. So I'm very apprehensive that this might be early for such a big project that to my mind, goes beyond the essential safety improvements.
Thank you, Nancy. Diane?
That's so helpful. Thank you so much. I go back now to the question, Tom, about whether the committee has to take into account in any way the concerns mentioned by Melissa Sawfield about the purpose of the building. I think Tom has been so straightforward about the fact that it's a work in progress. It is 3 to 5 years while they're trying to figure out exactly what the future of that building will be, that they need to get a head start on it in order to have it ready for the big celebration. So I wonder how we balance that or how we take that into consideration. And while I have the floor for a minute, I wish to apologize for any comment I made about the select board and to malign it. It was certainly not my intention. It was really to try to figure out what the history of, and although Anita presented a beautiful history, which we all read, but I mean, who really owned the property? I understand now better, and I apologize. Okay.
Diane, we're all doing good committee work, so thank you. Thank you so much. I wanted to maybe add a little bit of my own perspective on the Wright Tavern application. So, I mean, I feel obligated to say it, although it may be just so painfully obvious. So the facility is an absolute treasure, and it is architecturally, culturally, historically, in every way. It's an absolute treasure, and the stories, the narrative, the contributions that it has to make in its next several chapters, I mean, it's yet to be maybe defined. And yeah, Tom Wilson, thank you so much. You've done a really nice job, helping us to understand that, and Rosalind as well. Thank you for giving us that perspective. As an architect, and as an architect that does historic structures work, I go to what is the basis? And so my perspective, Diane, on your question, where you say, well, how much does the program matter? For me, it only matters if it influences our criteria, and so the basis of the assessment, I did read the CSE report as well as the HSR report in quite a bit of detail, and those are not unfamiliar reports to me. And the basis of the assessment is a commercial office building. Once you make that statement in your report, that sets a whole series of things in motion around the kinds of codes that are used, the floor loading, the construction type. There's a whole series of decisions that are then triggered once you say that the basis of the assessment is a commercial office building. And I don't recall hearing that really as one of the options. It may have been one of many scenarios that were developed, but that immediately causes me some concern. And I think I would maybe echo, I think maybe what Nancy said, it feels early. This is a treasure. This building needs investment and it needs the support that we're talking about. It absolutely does, but it also feels early. So with regard to page 7 of 12 of the CS report, the issue that I saw that it was most acute was the third and attic floor framing supporting the hip posts. And there were certain code references made in terms of the relative urgency of that particular issue. And to the recommendation was to address that particular issue was to remove all finishes. As we know, my analogy is my grandfather's axe, right? The axe handle was cracked, and so I changed the handle, and then there was a chip in the head, and I changed the head, and it's still my grandfather's axe. If we remove those finishes, there's no way to put those back, right? I mean, and so I feel like there are some additional perspectives required to find the right surgical way to deal with the most urgent issues. I have in front of me the project budget that has, the structural subtotal of 300,000, and then interior finished restoration, thermal, mechanical, fire suppression. And with regard to the things that came out of that report, I kind of feel like it would maybe be beneficial to work with the applicants to try to refine the application in breaking it down to the things that would really address sustaining the structure, which I think is the core narrative here. So that's my primary concern. There was a reflection in the HSR around the immediate utility being of primary concern, and it's not a surprise that the owner would opt all in for a number of years to immediate utility, but that immediate utility characterization, it leads to the devolution of some of these important attributes, and it referred to much loss of original material. And so I think I'm probably taking too much airtime here, but I'm feeling like the applicants are doing the most amazing work. This is the good, hard work for a national treasure. And how do we get as much alignment as we can around a vision that can then influence all of the consultants that are connecting themselves to aspects of that vision, so the recommendations they make are not wholesale? Because if somebody goes in there with a demolition tool and takes out a piece of the existing fabric based on the consultant's reports, I think it would be sad. It would be a real loss. So those are my comments.
Tom, thank you so much. It's a huge help. All of the comments are really very helpful.
This is Peter. I think I read through the letter of support from the Historical Commission, and it seems to echo many of the comments you just made, Tom. It just sounds like the support is tempered, and the reasons they lay out for that are fairly clear.
Nancy?
I have that letter up on my iPhone, but it's so tiny, I can't really read it very well. But I think most of what Tom said, and I think what I'm feeling, a lot of that is in the letter. And I think we just didn't know how to approach, that discrepancy between what we were seeing in the proposal what would be the best practice according to the Secretary's standards for the rehabilitation of buildings.
If I may, I mean, my tenure here, I mean, we've worked with applicants to try to optimize their presentation of the material to make it as successful as possible. And this is an absolutely kind of important application, and project. And to one of the committee's earlier points, there's necessary stabilization. Yeah, we don't want to have an unfortunate accident with this building and then really not be able to recover from it. That said, I don't feel like the CPC can be put in a position of saying, we've got a lolly column that doesn't touch the floor, and unless CPC funds it, that's not going to get fixed, and the building may go like this. I don't think we can put the CPC in that position. I think we are in more of a long range. We go through a recommendation process that then goes through town meeting, and then hopefully we get there, but I think if there are things that are that acute, then there needs to be a way to address those immediately, because the CPC process is not a short-term process.
Tom? Oh, Tom?
Yeah, Judy, please.
To the point you just made, would it be appropriate for us to kind of to provide guidance to the applicant to say, could you look within, like we did last year with the Holy Family Parish, where they refined the application that led to then us recommending it. Are we in a position to be able to do that with this one of, stabilization, take out, is there a way to take out the areas that within that structural report that they're assuming a certain usage of the building that might not be appropriate to do it this time? Do we have enough to be able to do that? And is it appropriate?
I don't feel like we can recraft this for the applicant, but I think we owe them, in terms of this open and public process, our transparent, kind of most intelligent response to help them be successful. And I would say things for me, and I speak for myself as a member of the committee, not for the committee. When I look at the project budget, and the number one item is removal of plaster, and then number two is reinforce all attic rafters and floor joists, it doesn't feel like a surgical stabilization. It feels like a macro renovation restoration that needs to then consider some of the existing fabric that might be impacted by that more macro scope. That's what it feels like. I would be open to a more detailed discussion about that, to try to understand that. And when we get to some of the other insulation under the sunroom, I'm sure very, very important. I don't know if the applicants would consider that kind of that immediate near-term stabilization while the program was coming into focus.
Because certainly as a committee member, and I don't have the technical and professional expertise that you have. This is, a chemical report, that'd be different, but this is kind of Greek to me. But from a conceptual standpoint, if it's appropriate, I certainly think it would be appropriate for the CPC to provide funding to make sure that the building is stabilized if it's within the scope of the project that they propose. Because like I said, I'd hate to wake up some morning and find out that it, had fallen over or something, something that caved in, because it is a national treasure.
Jumping in, Judy, I would agree with you. I mean, I would be willing to really work hard over the next period of time to do what we can do to clarify it, but we do have to answer to our broader community. And so I think there has to be a certain clarity about it.
Okay, thank you.
Other committee members? Rosalind, did you want to respond?
I think I just wanted to share how much I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the care of the questions that are coming into this. We shared at an earlier CPC meeting, Tom Wilson and I both, that our plan had been to put together the plan for the renovations and stabilization over the course of the fall of 2020 into the fall of 2021. And we rushed to meet the application deadline of October 2020 instead of a year from now. And so to some degree, I feel like I would like to apologize on behalf of all of the trustees of Wright Tavern and First Parish that you are quite right. We are coming to you with a rushed proposal for work that needs to be done, that we believe needs to be done, that we have understood from professionals needs to be done, that we were not planning to present in public to anyone until maybe next summer. So if we would be, as opposed to delaying any of the work for 2 years or so, we would be very eager to work with all of you, any of you, and additional experts to modify or upgrade or provide greater detail so that we've addressed the concerns. And also if we need to remove parts of this, that we understand what it is we need to take away. I do want to share with the committee that something that is new and I don't believe is known yet is that the historic preservation architect, Larry Sorley, who was involved with the Wright Tavern restoration well before the historic report, structures report, has now agreed to be a consultant as well, in addition to Stephen Mallory, who was one of the co-authors of the historic structure report. And we really really appreciate any recommendations you have for us on how to put together the right kind of application for you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I think you're doing an amazing job. There's certainly no apologies necessary. That is for sure. I would also add one reflection that while the opportunity to be ready for Rev 250 would be wonderful, go slow to go fast. I mean, like that, we don't want to just go fast and make wrong decisions. It's bigger than that. It kind of feels like that to me. This is such an important moment. So thank you. Nancy, did you have your hand up?
I just think you've done great work already. The HSR I think is wonderful. Stephen Mallory appears to be a very competent guy. I haven't seen specifications that were that useful and helpful as the ones that he prepared. Larry Sorley is an old colleague of mine, highly respected in the National Park Service. And I think you're really on the right track. I can't help myself in terms of looking at the second and the third floors, seeing them empty, and then being able to imagine what might happen there in terms of something like what happened at the Tavern on Lexington Green, where there's a lot of interpretive space and a lot of historic fabric that was preserved at the same time. It's a nice balance there, I think. I think they lost the genuineness of the Tavern, but a little bit, but I'm sure the reenactor community brings that back. Anyway, I think you're really on the right track. And the attic in particular, I think could be awfully interesting, but I can't tell you what to do with all the stuff up there. So those are interesting questions to me. Thank you.
Other committee members, any reflections, questions, comments, guidance for our applicants here? This is an important one. Obviously, all are important. Anybody okay here? I guess, would we have any guidance on potential next steps for our applicants? I mean, I will go on a little bit of a limb here. My sense would be if this was about, sustaining an important structure given some acute issues, structurally, let's say, if there was a way to define that even more clearly and purely as a subset of what this request is,
Yeah, the categories.
I think that would give us, we could go through another round of deliberations on that. If it's possible, it feels early, you're just putting your team together in some ways, and to get them to kind of turn something around in a week or 10 days, I just don't know if that's reasonable. That's why I said at the beginning, I don't think we can create or recreate or redefine your application for you. We can just give you our perspective on what we need.
Potentially, may I? Okay. First of all, I want to, as Rosalind said, thank you for your care and concern. And this building is something we all share and understand its importance, and I really appreciate that. And as somebody who's chairing the task force that is trying to define the future for the Wright Tavern, I'm thrilled at your support, and I really appreciate it. And I look forward to working with you all, in the future as we come back. And I think you're right. I think the standpoint that the project, we were aware of the opportunity, and so we sort of moved quickly. And I think what I hear you're asking us to do is to look at the proposal as we've defined it, look at those things that are most critical to the structural integrity to the building. And is there anything in that list that would be of paramount importance in the short term or the midterm, if you will? And there's some things that would clearly provide enhancements to the building and its structural integrity, but there's some things that are critical. And I think that it behooves us to perhaps not to modify our proposal, but perhaps to get you some of the things that we see among that list as most critical in the short term. And then, but this is we very much believe in the long-term sustainability of the building. So many of the things that are on the list and on the even broader list is things that we know are going to be important. But perhaps that will be informational to you in terms of your deliberations as to funding. So I just want to say thank you for supporting what we're trying to do. It's something we're all excited about it, and I know you all are as well. So.
Yeah. No, thank you, Tom. Thanks so much. Holly.
Yes. Would it be possible, especially because town meeting has been postponed till June, for us to have time to refine the structural information? Because now we have two consultants and can do it in conjunction with them and come back to you with a more detailed scope. I do, though, want to point out one thing to Nancy, and Nancy knows the struggles of this, but the third floor, the attic, cannot be open to the public. The staircase is very unsafe, and we don't want to make an addition to the building with a legal staircase or an elevator, but just the height of the ceilings, et cetera, even. So that has never been in, maybe historians would be allowed to go up and look at it, but I think putting emphasis on what the finished product is going to be in the attic, and perhaps the repairs can be done without taking all of the old lath out, just doing it places. But I just, I think that that I don't want to overstate the significance of the attic. It's interesting, but people really aren't allowed up there. And the second floor also has limited use because of the staircase. Again, we're not willing to do an addition to the building to put in a egress from the second floor. So the number of people who could be on the second floor at one time would be very limited. But those two things aside, I just wondered if we could have time to try to come up with a refined scope and just focus on the structural part and looking at the numbers that we already have. Some of it, some of the basement work, because the columns go all the way through the building. So some of that work doesn't impact structural, historic members in the building. So that's easy. So it's really looking at the attic and alternative ways to work on that. And the ceilings on the second floor, yes, it would be good to find which ceilings. Some have been replaced already and some are original. So,
Well, Holly, thank you. That's a very good question with regard to time. And what I would suggest is that question creates a little homework assignment for kind of both parties, both the committee and the applicants. So for the committee, I think we need to discuss that we were on schedule to vote our recommendations on December 15th. However, it's been a very compressed fall due to the delayed town meeting into September. And the select board has now, I think, delayed town meeting into maybe June 13th or something similar in 2021. So Heather advises us that we might have an extra bit of time, another month or something like that. I don't know how the committee is going to feel about that. I think we would want to have a discussion about that. And I think that maybe your team could pull yourselves together and to see if that would actually make a difference or if it's really 6 months that you need.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we could both do our homework and then come back together around that. But how do other committee members feel about my proposal?
Sounds good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a good idea.
I think I'd like to have us get through the list, and then we'll have some time to reflect on how are we doing moving toward our goal of recommendations and a vote. You know, what do people think about some extension of time, which I think it's at least possible this year, given the warrant date. Am I right about that, Heather? Yeah, Heather giving me a thumbs up. Okay, so there's some work to do on Wright Tavern. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Good discussion. Questions or comments from the public? Excellent. We are halfway through and it is 9:40. And Heather, are we right on schedule? No, maybe we need to pick up the pace. Okay, I get it. Yes, I understand. I see you're moving me along. So we're ready to go to number 8, and this is Wheeler Harrington, House and Land. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Oh, good, yeah. Let's see, yes, thank you. Thank you. I didn't catch you when you went forward. Okay, this is for $20,000 for the facilitation consultant. Any comments from the committee? I think we were relatively solid on this last time. Seeing none. Comments from the public? Excellent. We're ready to move to number 9. White Pond Beach Improvements. This is a $300,000 request. And we had a pretty good discussion about this last time. There was some questions about what was complete, what would the timing of this be? Any comments or questions about the White Pond Beach improvements from the committee? How are we feeling about our number? Fully fund? John, are you okay? John gives me a thumbs up. Diane, yes, please, mute off.
Tom, I know that there's going to be a public hearing on the 16th of December to discuss the White Pond issue. Kate suggested that it's not going to be necessarily fully the amount of money that she's requested right now, that can be pared down a little bit, or she anticipates it will be. I know we have a goal of getting finished by the 15th of December, but it might be prudent for us to think about extending that time just a bit so that we have time to deliberate and think about these things and also hear that, observe that public hearing and kind of hear what people are saying and give Kate a chance to respond to that. So I know
Yeah,
we
thank
have
you.
an eagerness and urgency to complete our work, but we do have time.
Yeah, thank you, Diane. I think well said. Other questions? Judy?
Maybe I misheard this evening, but I interpreted that the project that's being proposed, there was the part about the stormwater, which will help the health of the pond, that people can actually use it. But I had also thought I heard that the other portion of this funding would be to provide handicap accessibility, and that was required for even the public to use White Pond. Did I hear that incorrectly?
That's what I heard.
Okay.
They might not authorize opening another year.
Yeah.
That is accurate. That's correct. But as far as what Ms. Proctor said, I will likely have an updated cost estimate, perhaps by the end of December. The problem with that is that it will be a cost estimate based on the programming and what we know at that time. And I don't think we'll be done gathering the thoughts and feedback from the community. And I'd like to be able, after the first of the year, to have another session. So I would perhaps ask if the committee is amenable to having the 300, and I can always withdraw and change it before the printing of the warrant if possible. That would be very helpful because it also is dependent on what we put in the capital plan. And unfortunately, those processes are not happening concurrently. So we're a little bit behind there.
I thank you, Kate. Maybe I need a little bit of clarification now. With regard to being able to utilize the pond, if the town funding is reduced, will you still be able to move ahead with those necessary components?
I'm sorry, by town funding, do you mean if the capital plan for FY22 does not go through, or if this particular part of the funding?
Yeah, any part of the funding outside of the CPC recommendation.
Yep. So what we're obligated to do is the ADA access. We haven't separated those two out completely because my understanding is that the community was equally, if not more so, insistent on the stormwater management at the same time. But I have asked the consultants to break those two up so that we would have a number for only doing one versus the other. And so, but I don't believe I'll have that until the end of the year.
Okay, that help, and so that may be some subset of the 300.
Yes, the money that I put in that we asked for and received from CPC in 2019 is exclusively for ADA accessibility. The money that I put in here is almost predominantly for ADA accessibility, but there are some stormwater management components to the tune, I believe, of about $60,000. And so, of course, if we didn't follow through with that our application and the funding would be reduced by at least that much.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Just a question. This is Peter. I think my understanding was from the application that capital funding was already in place for FY20 and 21. Is there a dependency on 22 as well?
Yes. For this year, of which we just had, town meeting in September, we received 600,000. But some of that had to go to design work and due diligence, including the stormwater management analysis. And so we have about 450,000 of that can be utilized for the project, along with the aforementioned CPC money that we have, but that's earmarked for ADA accessibility. So we haven't used that for any of these initial planning phases. The entirety of that amount is still intact. So it is dependent upon some level of funding from capital. And I'm not sure, based on the design estimates and what we're going to do as far as scaling the project down, whether that amount is going to be 250 or between 250 and 500,000 from capital.
Thank you, Kate. Peter, all set. Matt.
I just was trying to understand the comment about not being able to open without the ADA enhancements, because I mean, this funding won't be allocated until June, and any project work would be after that. And I thought opening day is typically Memorial Day weekend. So I don't understand how that all works. Are we just going to be having a year with no White Pond this year?
No, the idea would be that we would have already, well, we would bid the project in the spring, and that it would be a two-phase project under one bid and one contract, such that we would be able to earmark and allocate the 600 that we already received and the 250 that we already received from CPC in phase one, which would be ADA accessibility. And then that contract would continue past July 1st when this additional funding is accessible and whatever amount we get from capital. And I can't bid the project unless I have an affirmative vote from town meeting. I can bid the project as long as I have an affirmative vote, but July 1st has not passed.
But I guess, again, I'm still confused because I thought this funding allocation was for accessibility improvements. And, you know, if you're going to be going out to bid in the spring before town meeting, not knowing whether it's going to get approved, I guess I'm just confused. Wouldn't that put us in a kind of an awkward situation? Again, I'm trying to understand how this works.
We wouldn't bid it without going to town meeting first. I recognize that that's in June, but what I could do is we plan to submit our application to the Architectural Access Bureau with letters that are coming from both, I assume we're still going to be having the public hearings, and letters of support from Finance Committee on the town's capital project. They would allow us to be able to open as long as we're in construction. It will not be the same beach when it's a construction, zone, for lack of a better term. But we were planning on trying to phase it such that we could sort of have the beach similar to what we did this year, where you sign up for certain areas and you can use it, and we're still working on accessibility during that time.
So Kate, the Access Board would be looking for some kind of a surety that this is all in process and then allow you to proceed?
Right. So last year we were able, we submitted something that said basically we were going to be going to town meeting in April. And then of course that didn't happen. And so we submitted something that said, and it was basically in the same vein as our COVID plan, which basically said, we were delayed in having town meeting and therefore we haven't had funding. So we're not being able to deal with this, but we have every intention on doing it once we've secured the funding. So we would have to do that again. If we don't even have it placed on the warrant, or the amount on the warrant isn't sufficient to be able to do it, that's when we start getting into a bit of a hairy area.
Thank you, Kate. Other questions on White Pond? Seeing none. Thank you. Oh, everybody okay with our number there, full fund? Let's move to number 10, Bruce Freeman Rail Trail improvements, 25,000.
Yep.
Questions or comments? Thumbs up?
Yep.
I think we were pretty solid on this last time. Great. Any questions or comments from the public? We are in good shape. Thank you, everybody. Moving to number 11, Warner's Pond Dredging. Delia did a nice job giving us a brief on the NMI inquiry. So it was great. This is for the full 250. Questions, comments, reflections, thumbs up from a couple of people.
Thumbs up.
We're all looking good. We're pretty solid. Any questions from the public? Pretty good. Matt, yes?
Yeah, I was just following up from Kate's comment last meeting, where she said that the public had indicated, in the first round of discussions about this project, that the scope of dredging should be minimized and that the area on the opposite side should be undisturbed, which would prevent the dredging from, taking material out on the side where it would be dewatered, potentially saving scope and, of the project. And I guess I'm trying to find where can I find those references? Because I mean, again, when you look at the feasibility report, it doesn't really go into any of that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, was that a Delia description?
Or maybe I thought it was Kate.
I believe Marcia spoke to that last time.
Or maybe
as
it was
well.
Marcia, sorry.
No. I mean, there was several parts to it, but Marcia offered something I think that was very useful.
There was a follow-up report done on the actual material and how that would all, the finalizing the estimates for the removal and looking at the additional work that was to be done. I have not reviewed that report, but I do believe it is online. And if not, I'll ask Delia to post it. But I think that information is in that report.
I imagine the info somewhere. I just couldn't find it. And then the other question that is in the feasibility study is just that talking about the infeasibility of dredging in the area where flow is higher because just that it would fill with sediment very quickly was the rationale. But I just think, well, that sediment is going somewhere. And so would it, otherwise go into the dredged areas? I guess I'm confused. Or would it turn, the rest of the pond, make it even shallower? I guess I'm still understanding the rationale of which areas are dredged and why, and
yeah, no, good questions.
The definition of the scope.
We've had some pretty specific conversations with Delia about the hydrodynamics, let's say, of the flow and the sediment and the period of time the dredging would last. I thought we got quite specific about that, and maybe we've been talking about this for several years. So
yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm coming in.
No need to be sorry whatsoever. I'm just reflecting on some of the things that we have gone through. Putting Delia on the spot. But Marcia, do you have any additional reflections?
I don't have any additional information for Matt tonight.
Yeah,
Matt, if it's helpful at all, I recall in one of these conversations talking about where the sediment ends up going, Delia mentioning that when the water comes in and slows down, the sediment drops out of the water table. So it's at that point where it comes into the pond, that's where it drops.
Yeah. Now, thank you, Burton. Now, the new information that I heard this evening, and it's early days, if you will, is that there potentially could be $300,000 to $500,000 of potential monies, revenue, if you will, related to this material. But it sounds like there's going to be, a number of conversations to go before that can be really confirmed. It sounded like that was coming from a consultant, but not necessarily from the project manager of StarMet NMI itself. So this is, I think, back to, I'm reflecting on Holly's question, would a little bit more time help this to come into focus? And if there was something that was anywhere close to $300,000 to $500,000, it would be very significant. And I don't know how that might alter anybody's sense of an application. But any committee members' thoughts about that? So I think I can imagine, Heather, that going back to Delia to say, if we are to come to a recommendation and vote by December 15th, what might that mean with regard to the outreach she's doing? If that were extended into January, might it provide more of an opportunity to clarify that plan and therefore modify the application? Don't know.
I don't know. And you could always, as we've done in the past, like after you approve your recommendations and, submit a warrant article, and we had that issue a couple of years ago where we realized we can't fund that, and we changed that amount to just be like the bucket for community housing. So it could, if they come to an agreement somehow before town meeting, which I don't know if all of that legal work could be, agreements could be done in time before June, that we could always amend the warrant article to, instead of it going, the 250,000 going to Warner's Pond, it goes towards the open space and recreation bucket or something.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Heather. Let's see, was it Judy and Diane
That's all right.
all set?
Yeah.
I just
Diane?
think that the idea of that Judy promoted is actually brilliant. And if there is a way that the cost can be offset, it would be so advantageous all the way around. So if it just takes more time for us to figure that out, I think we should use every opportunity to do so.
Yeah, thank you, Diane. And yeah, I second the brilliant idea by Judy. Yeah. Okay,
Actually,
good.
I think it was Matt.
Are there any other comments, comments from the public? Pretty good on this one. Okay, thank you. We're doing good work. Let's go to rifle range 34.5 for the survey and permitting. How's everybody feeling about that? I see thumbs up. John, thank you. I've got a thumb up. Nancy's good. Any questions, comments? Hester, thank you. All's good. I think we're good. Any questions from the community? Rifle range, we are locked in. Okay, excellent. Nice job. And we are ready to move to number 13, Chamberlain Park Bridge, survey and permitting, 35,000 fully fund. How's everybody feeling? I see several, Diane.
Thank you. Have we developed any clarity about whether the foundation that helped to originally develop this or the other foundations that support such enterprises sees this as a project that they could help to support?
Heather, any outreach there? I know it did come up. I think I remember on our site visit, there was a discussion about reaching out to the foundation.
Yeah, I believe Delia did submit a response on this, stating that she would be asking them for, funding towards the construction.
Okay.
I'd have to go back through my emails.
No, Heather, you're right.
Okay, yeah.
So that that presupposes then, I would just wonder whether the degree to which we believe that's an efficacious request, because that would make a big difference, I think, are likely to be an efficacious request.
Thank you, Diane. Any other questions or comments about Chamberlain Park Bridge? Paul, you all set?
Yep, I'm all set.
Okay, good. Thank you. Nancy?
Yes.
Thank you. Everybody good from the public? Questions, comments? Nice job. We're ready to move to number 14. This is the Emerson Conservation Restriction, fully fund 210. And I must say, and I don't know if Delia is still on the line, but I think she gave us some blend of natural resources with her real estate and banking tutorial on between appraised and assessed value. She did a brilliant job. Yes, any questions, comments about the Emerson Conservation Restriction? Burton, are you okay? I know you had some questions maybe last time on this. Feeling good?
Oh, yeah, I don't have any further questions or comments. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Committee members, everybody's good? Okay. Public, any comments or questions about the conservation restriction here? Okay, well done. Thank you. And the last but not least, and maybe the most difficult one that, we should put a cap on this of 11 o'clock, the staff and technical support category. This is for $40,000. I think it's the same request and approvals as last year for our staff support and all of the other things that go into running this program. Questions or comments with regard to number 15? Don't hold back. It's a good one. Guys, see thumbs up? Yes, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Nice job, everybody. Okay, and so we have gotten through the list of 15. It's just 10:02 by my computer here. Everybody's worked really, really hard. Heather, where are we on the bottom line?
Over.
Did it total? That's a question. 114. Probably need to check those formulas.
Yeah, I'd have to make sure the spreadsheet's calculating things.
Oh, the cell next to it certainly is off because that's 22, not 39. Okay, so what I would suggest is that I think we've done really, really good work this evening. I would appreciate any comments or reflections by the group and or concerns, but I think this is really coming into focus. We have another meeting scheduled for next Tuesday. It sounds like we will have the inputs from the select board and town manager, not sure about town council, to consider. I think we could reflect for a week and also maybe come back to the question of timing on all of this. And then either move into a December 15th or do December 15th and find ourselves in, the beginning of the year. But
yeah.
How's everybody feeling about where we are? I appreciate any kind of comments or reflections. Yeah, Nancy.
The complexity of I think I count 3 that really need more consideration. So those really deserve the extra time, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. I mean, it's been compressed for us, but it's also been a compressed period of time for our applicants.
Yeah, as they said.
There's a lot of moving parts for them, and we want to give them every opportunity to make the best application possible, I would think.
So it was Wright's Tavern and
Warner's Pond Dredging.
White Pond.
The
Warner's
2
Pond and White-
ponds.
I'm sorry?
2 ponds.
2 ponds. Yeah, that's where I had it.
Yeah, thank you, John. Good. All right. How is everybody feeling about next week? This was our kind of our optional meeting, Heather. We were going for the 15th and we said we'll do the 8th if we need it. So we have those 2 dates in our calendars. How's everybody? Shall we just charge ahead?
What would we do?
What would we do? Yeah, we will. It'll be an opportunity for us to have at least some kind of reflection on the priority list from the select board and the town manager.
Okay.
So that's one thing. It would also potentially be an opportunity for us to get some feedback from a couple of our applicants where I think we're asking them for some additional clarifications. And it may be the 3 we just mentioned, that now I don't know, and that they each have a slightly different issue, but I don't think Delia was here for the second part of our conversation. So those are possibilities.
Okay.
But what does everybody think? I'm not driving any particular schedule agenda.
We could also defer the minutes to that meeting, but it's a different meeting. So
Tom,
I'm good for the addition for the next week's meeting.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Yeah, you run this so beautifully and so thoughtfully, and I think that I think we do need that 8th and that meeting on the 8th, particularly to hear the select board ordering of things.
I feel similarly that before the end of the year, I would really like to pull together all the inputs we can possibly do. While we're in this intense period, we're all thinking about it. We've got everything we need. If we need to go into the new year with providing some additional time and some more deliberation and refinement, for me, I'm okay with that. If others are, and if Heather gives us permission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sound right? Okay, Heather, it sounds like we're on for the 8th.
And maybe in the meantime, we could think about where to find that $500,000 gap or whatever it ends up being, maybe more now.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Burton?
Maybe not more.
Just to note, I'd have to skip the 8th because there's a planning board meeting that I can't miss on that night, but I'm sure you'll have a quorum.
Burton, that's actually a very good point. So if, Heather, without going into any kind of detail, we will potentially be without our chief planner or support person next week. And Elizabeth Hughes is also not available because she will have to be at the planning board meeting.
Yes, so this is my last meeting with you guys until March.
Yikes.
So next week, Elizabeth, who's going to be the point person for CPC, needs to be at planning board next Tuesday. But I think the agenda and the items that you guys have to discuss is something that Tom can, facilitate that conversation. But just an FYI, you likely will not have a staff person.
Yes, I think we can carry forward, but Burton, it's, we won't be happy to miss you, that's for sure.
I wish I could join you. It won't be a fun planning board meeting.
Okay, all right. Well, it sounds like we should move forward for the 8th and not skip the 8th for the 15th. Everybody favor? Let's just double check them. Okay, let's go forward on the 8th. Let's just keep up the momentum. Okay, Heather? So we're good, and we will self-appoint a volunteer, if you will, to do the minutes for that meeting. I know we had a couple of people volunteer already. Paul.
I'll volunteer again, Tom. I'm happy to do it if nobody else wants to do it.
Well, yeah, you're terrific. That's really wonderful.
I can't make any guarantees they're going to be at the same level of quality, but I can do my best.
It would be hard to meet the level of Heather's minute.
Just have to be a summary. They don't have to be detailed. If people need detailed information, there'll be this Zoom recording. So.
And I could just say, view the recording, and that could be the sum total.
Annotate the agenda. Tom, thank you.
Yeah, good. Do we have a set of minutes that we need to do we want to try that, or we have a set of minutes?
That for the next meeting, Tom?
Yeah, it's 10. It's after 10 o'clock. Can we defer that to the 8th, Heather? You okay with that? Okay.
She didn't care.
She's, yeah, right. You're.
Yeah. I approve of that.
Things to think about at that point. Well,
I want to wish Heather
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And may it go beautifully for you and for your new daughter.
Very special. Yeah, we'll be thinking of you.
You need to let us know
Yes, I will.
all the details.
Where are you going to be?
All the details, John.
What hospital are you going to be at?
Brigham Women's.
Oh, nice.
Oh, great.
Nice.
All of our children were born. And our granddaughter. So.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, Heather, all the best. So I want to thank the committee for all the hard work, and thanks to our reps from other groups for joining us, and members of the public. So have a nice evening. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
And here we go. All in favor? Yes. Tom? Yes. Peter?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Burton?
Yes.
Nancy?
Hi.
Esther?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Unanimous. Well done. Thank you, everybody. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Good work.
Thanks, everybody. Have fun, Heather.
Thanks.